Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ion Canon Podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network for in-depth discussion on the lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew Neugebauer, and I am coming to you live from Underworld North Studio in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And as always, I am joined all the way across the continent by your friend of mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how are you doing this week?
Thanks, Matthew. I'm doing good this week. Doing excited. Pretty excited.
There we go. There we go. We're getting set for another good sequelist discussion. We're talking about the Sequel Trilogy. We know it gets a bad rap for not having a consistent plan, whatever, blah blah blah. What if it has a consistent story? We look at the films. We look at the text as is. Got also some news to talk about, but we'll look at the text as is. Discover the narrative thread within. To do that, we got our guest here joining us from the other corner of the continent, all the way also across the continent, but in a different direction. It's the co-head of Culture Slate Video Production. It's Omar the Negotiator. Omar, good to see you again. How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you guys for having me. I'm always down to talk sequels, so I'm super excited. I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm excited to be here. So thank you.
There you go.
Yay!
Good to hear. In case people are wondering what the rest of this Darth Vader thing looks like, you got it right there. It's the actual same thing. It's just popping through. No, I'm just kidding. It's.
Oh, I was gonna say.
yeah, there you go. When if you watch the flagship podcast with Dom, he gets the screen up. I keep talking about that every single time, but I'll talk about that eventually. First off, we'll get the plugs out of the way. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Ion Canon Pod. EYEONCANONPOD. Get more involved. Get more on the ball with posting things and sharing things, and especially if there's some news that comes out. I want to get it on that comics news, books news, especially on Instagram, even sharing those stories. And Threads here on the Underworld YouTube channel, Underworld Facebook page. You can check us out there as well. We got YouTube memberships and super chats and Discord. All those things are part of the Star Wars Underworld family. So check the link in the description below. If you want in on the Discord, Joel, what's happening on the Discord these days?
Well, last week we just watched the Star Wars 1978 holiday special. So if you like Stir Wits, and B. Arthur, you'll like that, and an interesting conversation on why, if you really think about it, the holiday special was the Andor of its time. Not many people can really like that. So if you want, that's the kind of conversation we have. Nothing this week. Look forward to next week. We'll be having a game night.
There you go. Fun times, and as always, go in there, chat, tag Joel. He'll respond for sure. He's guaranteed. There we go. Got the last bit of plugs out of the way. Tractor Beam Comics reviews. Usually we do them Thursday afternoons, at 12:15 Pacific, but we're trying something new this week. We're gonna mix it up. I got a work thing, but also, hey, why not try a different time slot? Comics are for Wednesdays, and Wednesdays are for comics. So the comics come out Wednesdays. We're going to read them, and then we're going to talk about them. Chris Abbott and I, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Underworld channel. Give that a go, give that a whirl, and then hopefully get that uploaded to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So comic books reviews, part of the Underworld Network on the Tractor Beam kind of thing about spinning that off, moving that into a direction into its own separate podcast. Definitely intimately connected to the Ion Canon and to Star Wars Underworld, but definitely looking forward to that. Looking forward to that kind of
Ion Canonverse is growing. We have our first spin-off.
There we go. I got the spin-off. What's fascinating is what was I gonna say? We don't have, that's I think usually Thursdays, 12:15. That's my lunch break. I got to get back to work at 1, like 12 to 1. The only restriction is that I'll have to get to bed eventually, and Chris will have to get to bed eventually. But other than that, we can go as long as we want. So we might even talk about some more news and different things, but certainly not talking about Bounty Hunters number 41 because Penguin and Marvel kind of screwing up the release schedule. But other than that, it's going to be a good discussion. No wonder I felt the disturbance in the Force. I will say this: on Tuesday after that, this jogs my mind. The only reason it does, this is a bit of a coincidence. It jogs my mind. How's it going? Not tomorrow, but the week after. I'm going to see a Star Wars film thing in a theater speaking of the holiday special, the documentary on the holiday special, A Disturbance in the Force, is being playing. It. I mean, you could get it on digital, and I probably will get it on digital. But yeah, you can get it on. Well, it's being released in theaters, and so I'm going to go check that out. Dom and I and some other friends are going to go, and Kareem and some others are going to go check that out. And yeah, we'll definitely have to let you know how that is, what I think about it, and it should be fun. There's an about. What do you want? There you go.
There we go.
Yeah, just get it. I should do a counter, like Canadianism's counter. Ding.
We should.
1, 2. There we go. Okay, I've gabbed enough. Joel, what do you got in this week for Star Wars?
Oh wait. Before we begin, actually, Omar, do you want to plug anything at the beginning of this podcast?
Fair enough. Go for it.
Before I begin my week of Star Wars.
Well, right now I just want to plug probably my Twitter. I'm not going to call it X, but my Twitter account is at the Negotiator 95. It's that for all of my socials except for YouTube, which is at the Negotiator. I was lucky enough to get just the Negotiator on YouTube as a handle, which is pretty cool. I tried getting the one for Twitter, but Priceline Negotiator apparently owns that one, so
Dang,
can't get that one. But they're inactive. They've been inactive for years, so they should just give
Take
it
them to court. No,
but
Good.
that aside, maybe at the end of the show I'll have something cool to talk about.
Sweet.
Nice. All right.
Yeah. All right.
Now I can do my week of Star Wars.
Go for it.
So, last week we talked a bit about, the interconnectivity of canon and all that. And so basically this week, my brain has been talking about semantics. Yay, semantic. We love semantics on this podcast. I'm thinking about canon and continuity and whether or not they're the same thing or different things. And I've been kind of like trying to wrap my head on these two words. Because there are things in Star Wars that are all Star Wars. Well, not all Star Wars, if we count Vision. But most Star Wars is canon. But there are things in Star Wars that don't have a lot of continuity. I think the two kind of quasi examples right here, and also actually the sequel trilogy kind of fits into this later, is Mando Season 1 and Ahsoka Season 1 are almost the yin-yang, the polar opposites of this sort of idea of they're both canon. They are the canon. But Mando Season 1, very light on continuity. Very light on just kind of outside of, unless you consider the setting continuity, which, we can debate that for at another time, post Endor. Very light on just kind of being attached to all these threads and whatnot. Which is why I think Season 2 is so ingenious, because that's that's when Mando really starts to get involved in the wider Star Wars universe, and he and poor Grogu just kind of getting wrapped up in this thing. Ahsoka Season 1, on the other hand, I mean, we could talk about how it balances out, but it's like has to be somewhat tied to a continuity. It's the continuity of Ahsoka. It's the continuity of Rebels to an extent. You can't just say, "Oh, Ahsoka's someone brand new." She just called Ahsoka and looked like Ahsoka. She's still the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker, and this Grand Admiral who has been defeated and seeks to return. That is obviously a continuity from previous show. So, but they're both canon. So yeah, that's kind of where my brain is. And I'm curious, do you see canon and continuity as two separate entities, or are they just kind of interchangeable words that we use a lot?
Maybe, I mean, now that you bring that up, I mean, I will say, well, it kind of I think connects with what you've been getting at before about different levels of continuity and different things that are more tied in or less tied in. What canon could be means to say that the Mandalorian is canon is that a future story could tie into that. And so, it's still within the realm of things. It still tries to be and situates itself within the universe, but doesn't have to necessarily be. I mean, it's still in continuity. It's just that it's not as much of a concern as with Ahsoka. Right. My real world, real world goes is Favreau and Filoni. Mandalorian. Favreau's coming in. I mean, yeah, he was pre-Vizsla. He's been involved, but now he's coming in and telling his story. Whereas Filoni, he's already told so much story. And he wants to continue telling that story, and so there's the word continue, right? Continuity. So Yeah, it's that also Ahsoka is so connected to the Skywalker saga and to the Skywalker family. She basically is a Skywalker
Got
herself.
7 seasons of TV and more
Yeah,
with Rebels.
exactly. And so, like, yeah, as the main character of a show
Right.
that happened to have Anakin Skywalker in it too. So, yeah, I think what we're getting at, I think you've gotten at a few times already, and we can keep getting at it. That's great. Is that there's just there are varying levels of connectivity. Is another word. Con with continuity, connectivity. Um, I mean, canon is a different word. It's a Greek word. Con is a Latin word. But just by the way, but the varying levels of how much a storyteller wants to connect and continue a story versus how much a storyteller wants to tell something new and different. And then Visions is still in a conversation with this. There we go. You conversing with this and saying we're not going to worry about it at all. We're just going to tell our own thing using the images and aesthetic of Star Wars and kind of the sense of light and dark and the themes of dark side and light side,
Right.
but tell something completely different. It's intentionally not canon. It's intentionally
Right.
not in continuity at all. Canon, I mean, Mandalorian could be in continuity and in different ways is, right? I mean, Carson Teva comes from the Mandalorian. Papa Toronto, Carson Teva, this guy right here. You know,
I love
so
this guy.
yeah, and it's good. I mean, what is also good to note is, I mean, it's an exciting thing. This is maybe the best thing. We're in a great era of flexibility, of Favreau and whoever, you can be as tied in or go off in your own corners you want. Filoni, you can continue. I mean, Filoni definitely, because he's in the new position. Continue your story. Deborah Chow, you can tell this story specific to Kenobi and Anakin and Vader and Leia. Leslie Headland, here's a whole book publishing initiative that you really love. Or Leslie Headland can come to them and say, hey, there's the book publishing initiative that I love almost as much as this guy Matthew does. And can say, hey, I want to actually tell a story that is, I don't know, in the vein or in some form of continuity, in some form of conversation with the events of the High Republic, albeit 100 years later. And still being able to explore on her own this newer era that hasn't been explored yet either. So yeah,
That makes Tony Gilroy like the most ironic, being a non-Star Wars fan. He decided, no, I'm going to put my story smack tab in the middle of all Star Wars.
It's in direct continuity. It's Andor, Rogue One, New Hope, right?
Exactly.
But he also probably, I mean, there's probably something about working on Rogue One and saying, okay, I'm gonna, what is it about A New Hope and leading into that probably appealed to him actually.
Right.
And so yeah.
But
yeah,
Omar, do you want to add any? Do you have any thoughts on semantics and words?
I think Matthew probably covered pretty much everything. I think just what I would add is when I think of the word continuity versus what is canon. Canon, of course, to me, just I can imagine very like in-universe stuff as well as like what fans themselves consider canon. Because I do tend to believe that like canon is a very fluid thing that isn't necessarily like strictly one thing. Like, okay, you have to listen to what the corporation tells you is canon, which yes, they have a guideline for what is canon, but you yourself can also have head canon. And at the end of the day, these are all just narratives that like we can pick and choose and like really do with as we want, because how we interact with fiction is just it's a very personal thing. So that's what I think of when I think of canon. When I think of continuity, I tend to think more of like the transmedianess of everything, how exactly one story connects to another and paints a picture of the grand outline that is Star Wars. That's kind of where my mind goes to. Perfect example, as you just said, Andor. Maybe people will say like, oh, there's not a lot of continuity there. It's very standalone, but in reality, it is, after all, an offshoot of Rogue One. So by its very existence is continuity in regards to the overall Star Wars narrative. So that's how I kind of think. Like, these are two words that can absolutely be interchangeable, but I tend to think of different things when hearing each one of them. So yeah.
I like to think about the origins of the words. Interestingly, they both kind of refer to lines, or like, I don't know what continuity the etymology of that word is.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, my mind it goes to a line that keeps going or can be stretched out. We know canon stretched back all the way back to January of 2022 when I brought the meter stick out. The very first thing we did, I brought my prop out. Canon refers to a measuring stick, or it's also the same word as a cane that you can walk on. And so, because I guess they'd have just any kind of cane, right? The word cane just means a long stick. And it was used either for walking or for measuring distances. So, yeah, just a measure of what is the story and what isn't. Again, yeah, I think we have to accept that it is a tricky thing when it comes to fiction. It comes, we get the word. It's a loan word from, well, not just Western Christianity, but Christianity generally. That you would say the canon of the Bible is measured by whether or not it tells the story of God, the God that we know would know as recognize as Christians. And so that's it's similar, but the folks who are establishing the canon wouldn't be the ones to claim that they are making the story up as they go, right? People could accuse them of that, right? Say, oh, it's all made up, it's all constructed, it's all what did Bill Maher, the Jewish Book of Fairy Tales. They, I see why people would say that, but also that's an important difference to say there's a spiritual mysticism about, Dave Filoni isn't gonna necessarily, I don't know, maybe he might say, I'm meditating on my room and these stories just come to me as some sort of inspiration or whatever. Also stories that are he might have also stories that have been passed down millennia and are just brought together, whereas this story is only since 1977. So yeah, it is tricky to use that word, and I've come to a place of saying it's tricky, but we're still going to use it. We're still going to have a podcast named after it with the name in it. Where's that 9 there? Okay, there we go. That word. And to say, yeah, things can connect and be canon, the other part of the Star Wars canon. Yeah.
If you ask some creators, their stories come from certain substances, which I don't think I can talk
that's
about.
Probably also true.
Yeah. But yes, that's it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Omar.
Yeah, go for it.
Yes.
Your week of Star Wars.
My week of Star Wars. Oh, yes, that's right. There is something I wanted to include because I saw that you guys did an episode on the Mortis trilogy. I'm not gonna lie, it was a very long episode, and I didn't get to watch all of it. But I have at least
all of it yet.
But I have been told that this one point that I brought up to Joel did not get talked about, and that is in regards to the Mortis dagger. Now, did you guys talk about the Mortis dagger at all during your initial
I had it in the notes, and I think we only briefly talked about it a little bit, but I don't think I went into a whole thing about it.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with it, and I like it, so keep going.
Okay, cool. And it's a very like on the nose, I suppose, look at it, but it's the fact that like it's the idea of following the dagger. Just who is it handed to, and how is it used? Like at the very beginning, we see it being handed from the daughter to Obi-Wan. So that is, you could say, the light side is handing off this weapon to Obi-Wan to wield. And then later on, the dagger gets taken from Obi-Wan by the dark side, or rather the brother, in order to accidentally, at least in the narrative. But what's most important is the fact that the dark does extinguish the light, in that the son does end up stabbing the sister. So already, just as like detailing it like that, I've always thought that the dagger of Mortis is pretty it's more than likely supposed to be an allegory for Anakin Skywalker, like a weapon that has been handed off to Obi-Wan to train, and just through things that end up happening, get taken away from him and handed to the dark side. So right off the bat, what do you guys think of that? I'm curious.
I love that.
It
Yeah.
reminds-
That's wonderful. Yeah, and I think especially where you might be going with this, but just as just a symbol, as an icon, an image of what's happening. I mean, the dagger. Yeah, I mean, he's General Anakin Skywalker, the hero, and then he's Darth Vader, the great villain, the great enforcer of the Empire. Yeah,
right. And what were you going to say?
and
Joe?
also one more thing
sorry.
to say.
Okay, go ahead.
The son, by stabbing the daughter, destroys himself, right? And there's
Exactly.
Anakin chucking Palpatine over the risk losing his own life, sacrificing his own life for Luke and for the galaxy by chucking Palpatine over the ledge. Yeah.
So weirdly, this actually reminds me of something completely different. This reminds me of one of my favorite shows from the early 2000s, starting 2009, called Once Upon a Time. Where one of the characters, Rumpelstiltskin, is like this powerful dark entity, and you can only control him with a dagger. So I this is an old show, and like one of the whole thing is like sometimes like one of the villains would get like the dagger and like, oh shoot, like Rumpelstiltskin now can't control himself. He's under somebody else's command. It's like, oh no, bad thing's gonna happen. And I don't know, like I had like this idea like, oh, what if Thrawn, like wild this idea like, what if Thrawn gets the dagger, now he controls the sun, and it's like, oh no, he's gonna use the sun like a tool, like a attack dog. Not good things are gonna happen.
No, I really want an apple strudel. Just like
exactly.
Yes.
I saw part of that show. It's an interesting show.
Yeah, no, I did too, actually. I think outside of like the last 2 seasons, I pretty much, once they started introducing Elsa, I was like, but anyway,
but that's where my brain goes.
Right. You guys basically, exactly what I have been thinking. And the way it ends, of course, is with the father utilizing it as a sacrifice, and then it ends up defeating the son. Again, even just that scene on its own without the dagger, it kind of parallels a lot of the sacrifice of what Vader does with Palpatine, as you mentioned. So like even without the dagger, like that scene is super important. So but with the dagger, it just kind of adds to the idea that this dagger could represent Anakin Skywalker. And so yeah, just a little something to add to y'all's discussion in regards to Mortis. I think there's so much to those 3 episodes, and in a lot of ways, my interest in those 3 episodes of the Clone Wars kind of informed how I viewed the sequel trilogy. So that's a good little segue there. So
we'll definitely pick that up in a bit. I thought where you're gonna go, and Joel, you hinted at this. What is Baylan looking for on Perudia? What's he really hoping for? And yeah, I mean, I think maybe Don and I have talked about this or something or someone, but yeah, it might seem a little MacGuffin-y for him to be like looking for this dagger, but it seems to me we have the blade of Mother Talzin. Why not also just connect it and say, well, here's the interesting thing. This will be interesting. Baylan's looking for the blade as a way of just embodying the power of the sun, the power of the dark side. And it turns out it doesn't work out. It turns out everything he's looking for. I don't know what they're going to do given Ray Stevenson's unfortunate death, but what they end up doing with whoever's there on Perudia, for it to actually be a dud and say you can't actually control the Force, it will always come back, and Ahsoka is going to be able to teach that lesson. And so, yeah, it's a great point. We got Skywalker's Academy in here. Let's see some kind of good comments here on that note. Couldn't correct the balance, so Anakin's the answer. Yeah, and that's a great thing about the Mortis trilogy. Look for Abeloth. Definitely heard of that.
That is a popular
we'll
one.
see.
Mama Abeloth's coming back, folks.
I mean, there could be some connection to the Night Sisters. We'll see. 25,000 years ago, we'll see. Anything's possible. Anything's possible.
Anything is possible.
I have doubts, but I I'm interested. I'm very interested to see what they do with well, as you said, what they're going to do with Ray Stevenson's character and what the original plan was, and how they're going to pivot. So that's the most exciting aspect of where Ahsoka can go is in terms of a show for me.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that one of the last shots where he's on the mountain there.
God,
yeah,
it was so good.
Jill, you have anything more to add with that, or can we go?
No, keep going. That's,
All right, so I'll just get into mine then. I'm 2/3 of the way into Eye of Darkness by George Mann. The big twist I haven't gotten to yet. I know there is a big twist. I will say the one thing we know, and we'll hopefully be able to do a longer, more intense review when I finish this thing. The politics on Coruscant is very interesting, incredibly interesting. Everything in the Inclusion Zone is a bit of work to read through, and I've thought about that and thought about, okay, it's giving the cliffhanger, and another thing Dom and I have talked about is just, and Chris Abbott and I messaged about, it's the cliffhanger and it's slower paced. It's an adult novel. It takes work to read through, which is both a good thing.
I feel that.
It's a good thing, but it's also like, well, it's a tough thing. It's also a good thing because it means it's not entirely passive. You actually have to will yourself into getting to it. I don't feel that with the young adult novels, but I mean, they're just better paced, maybe. Or not necessarily. It's just differently paced and it's difficult. So hopefully, I know from everything I've heard with this novel, it's definitely a great payoff of what it sets up. So off to phase 3, definitely off to a great start, I will say. But gonna get through this. Gotta get through this. We got a week. Hopefully, we can get our review in next week. We'll see. I gotta put some feelers out for guests and whatnot. But yeah, figure that out.
I got 5 hours to go on that audiobook. So
yeah, it's 1 hour a day, Joel. 1 hour a day. There we go.
Yeah,
and also 1.2 speed. So that's that's how I have survived some of the longer audiobooks.
Yeah, that's fair. Omar, are you up on High Republic? Or are you into High Republic a bit?
Unfortunately, no. It's been something I've been needing to get on because of how great I hear it is. But at the moment, no. I've kind of just solely been consuming the on-screen canon material. So yeah.
All good. Joel, how far are you? You said 5 hours away.
5 hours. I think I'm on chapter 40.
Okay, so I'm almost caught up to you.
Oh, I'm still ahead. Woo-hoo.
Yeah. Have you gotten to the big twist yet? I guess this is
I don't think so, but I might not notice what the twist is because I'm very like, okay. So I just can't go along with the story.
Apparently, there's a big twist of something.
Okay. Well, I can still say I still like it better paced than Light of the Jedi.
Yeah,
I'm like that with all the books though, where like it takes willpower for me to read all of them. So I don't know if I can say it's just an adult novel thing, but that's just me.
That is what I found is Light of the Jedi. It's doing something similar to Light of the Jedi and setting up a lot of things and giving us a sense of what the galaxy is like in this time. But it is a lot more coherent and a lot clearer of who's doing what and where. And yeah, so I mean, all 6 of these adult novels so far have been ensemble novels. So and they've mostly been great. I'd say. I mean, I love them. I like the young adult novels a little better, but
they're more character focused. So that's why.
Yeah, they are more character focused, and that's. But this is more character focused, and that George Mann is doing a great job with that. So, and I mean, I'd say the phase 2 adult novels were also. I mean, there's only 4 characters to really deal with, and really
that's true.
Yeah, so that was helpful. So if I get that done, I will figure it out before Christmas, before the holidays.
Do it.
We'll figure it out. All right. Just a bit of news to dive into, and I want to talk about this. I want to just join the podcast area for a second here. And I'm bringing this up, this Mando movie rumor, and it's been kind of debunked, but it still feels my gut like a rumor that's true. Just as the way it's circulated, the way it's gone about, it seems like the kind of thing that people who are in the know have let people outside of the know just know, and say that they're likely still. I mean, it's always going to be a consideration. They're always going to talk about it.
Could
let me
happen,
tell
could
you
not.
when, yeah, I'm glad Dom told me about this when I was near the washroom because I abhor this idea. This is my incendiary take. I detest this idea. Please do not make this into a film. Do not rush the story. You have a story. I mean, yes, I love it when things connect better and tie in better, but let Mando, let Din and Grogu have their time to go off on their adventures for a little bit. Connecting with Carson Teva, connect it with this whole Imperial Remnant story, sure, but if you have the time, you have the budget, you have the scripts, everything fleshed out. Give the time, and it's worked, right? I mean, people can debate
Not
if
really,
season
no.
three. No,
Yeah.
I was gonna say people can debate if season 3 has worked. Season 3 worked for me, and seasons 1 and 2 worked for everyone, and so, and of course, Ahsoka worked for everyone, and Andor's worked for everyone, and the only one who's really, Book of Boba Fett probably could have been a movie, but
And Kenobi.
and Kenobi, but but even then, it still kind of earned its place as a fuller series, taking the time with Reva and with everyone else. So, let Din and Grogu have their time to develop further what it means to be father and son here. I mean, that it really smacks of Bob Iger coming in saying, "Okay, Kathy, we want to make 2 films a year." And yeah, I know The Last Jedi came out. I know Avengers Endgame is gonna come out in May, but let's put Solo in May. Oh wait, we need until December to no. Put Solo in May. We'll make lots of billion dollars.
I still think people overestimate. So, like, no one cares about Solo. I'm sorry, that movie was always going to bomb.
I think there was a lot of factors that really.
I disagree. I don't. Well, I think
I didn't
if
agree with that at all.
they put it a different time, if they had taken the time to clean,
I don't agree with that at all.
That's
I don't agree
fair.
with that.
You can disagree, but I think a lot of people will say, yeah, and at least that's my
no
my
one
sense
cares
is,
about Han Solo anymore. It's 20 years.
but
too
they
late.
could have made. Well, sure, it was a film that didn't necessarily need to be made in the first place. Anyways, my point being, this feels like that declaration from on high by this guy who has disadvantaged Lucasfilm in the past by this kind of decision, and it's just let's put a film out there, make billions of dollars, and it's gonna cheapen the story, and it's gonna make it take it away from what it could have been. And there's that. Now the one caveat I'll give to myself is maybe I kind of get used to the idea of it being the series, and so I'm like, okay, I gotta change my expectations and whatnot. But yeah, I also don't like the idea that Star Wars has to be exclusively a film thing. I get Lucasfilm wants to get back to the theaters.
Well, it kind of is. I'm sorry. I don't think the shows have really replaced the films.
Since 2019, it's been primarily a TV thing, right?
But that's the thing. I don't think people have loved streaming services. I think they would chuck streaming for films any day. I think the wider pop culture.
Yeah,
would.
I mean, okay. I mean, sure. I don't think it's Bob Iger I don't think it's gonna be the golden ticket that he seems to think it is, if this is Bob Iger's idea. If not, I don't know. I just okay. Anyway,
I mean, I love the idea, quite frankly, because I don't think any of Mandalorian is honestly could have worked as a film. I don't think the story is that deep. It's never been that deep. I think they all could have been movies, quite frankly. And I think season 3 kind of shows, Favreau's not talented enough to do a series, and if he doesn't want to do all the writing himself, if he does want to do all the writing, strike that, reverse it. Just do a movie, because quite frankly, I think that's what a lot of people want to be doing. I think they all want to be doing
movies better than shows, so I will give him that.
And if he doesn't want to treat it like TV, which, let's face it, outside of Andor and Acolyte, none of these shows are really being treated like TV. That's like all the Marvel shows. They all should have been movies, quite frankly. At least a good chunk of them. Maybe like Loki and
WandaVision, Loki.
Those are the only two.
Hawkeye was great as a show, honestly. Like the way it built up the 6 episodes. So I don't know. What I'm saying is, let's keep the balance. Let's actually make a serious storytelling question here. It really smacks of I think this is going to make $1 billion because everyone else wants Star Wars to be films.
Well, it
But
kind of is. I mean, I'm sorry. It's like
I don't know.
if you wanted to promote High Republic, no one kind of cares.
Well, no, but okay, let's get to the point here. Let's get on the point, Joel. Like, prove me. It'll have to prove me wrong. I think this is going to be another Solo. I think this is going to be another for multiple reasons. Fine, but specifically because they're just throwing it onto the film as opposed to taking the care to.
Well, I mean,
anyway, Omar, I'll let you dive in here.
I don't agree with that for a few reasons. Hold on, let me give my counterpoint first.
Okay, fine.
A, this isn't Han Solo 20 years too late. This is Mando. He's still the big boy in town. B, they might not be wanting it to make $1 billion. Like, why does it have to make $1 billion? As long as it just makes its money back. I think that's what, the era of $1 billion films is kind of over. It's done, unless you're Barbie. I think Marvel, Star Wars, Mission Impossible, I think their era of $1 billion, like, just be happy with
Bob
400
Iger still wants to make $1 billion.
Well, everyone does, but, whether or not everyone does, but I think if they budget it correctly, then you don't have to.
Sure, I just think,
and also, quite frankly, again, Star Wars is a film franchise. I don't think the TV shows have replaced it. And I think if you look at people talk about the TV show, there is kind of a lesser than kind of situation. Even with Marvel, there's sadly a lesser than.
I guess because of the time. Yeah. I mean, it's only been, 4 years?
Time, and, Star Wars originated in film and Marvel too. It'd be like if there were only Star Trek movies and not a show. I guarantee you, even if they were great, I guarantee you people are like, where's the TV show? Star Trek is TV.
Yeah, I mean, by that logic, I'd still say Star Trek is a TV thing. I don't know. I'll be happy to be proven wrong, but it just, I'm sick of the corporate machine dictating things like that. So
I mean, welcome to capitalism, buddy.
I know.
The world we live in. That's the world we live in, and we can't change it.
Just overthrow it already,
So, I'm sick of those interests getting in the way of good storytelling like that. It's just...
That's fair.
Anyway, Omar, what do you think?
Yeah.
This is the most heated back and forth we've ever had in 2 years.
Oh my God. And I'm honored to be here for it. So allow me to be the Bendu.
Thank you.
One in the middle. And say, well, because like my perspective is I'm coming off of a video script where I am fairly critical of like the current slate of Star Wars television series. So like I'm already kind of in a place mentally where I'm ready for films to come back. And I'm in a place where at the very least I want Star Wars television to greatly improve its quality. Because I do think there's just a lot of room for improvement that I think can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of in this place when I hear a Mando movie is in the work or is talked about, rumors, things are already changing like every day as to the validity of it. I don't know. I'm not the only positive side, and I have talked about this, the only positive side I really see out of it is probably more effort will go into quality control for that story. And but outside of that singular reason, I don't have much reason else for it to be a film. And I'm kind of in this place where I'm thinking like it doesn't necessarily, because season 3 of The Mandalorian for me was mostly great, all except for the final 2 episodes, which I feel was a mad dash to the end, that I thought could be an excellent season 4 if it all took place on Mandalore. That's kind of the vibe I was getting from all of season 3. Like, oh, this feels like much like the first arc of The Mandalorian. It was kind of a 2-season thing. This feels like the beginning of a next arc that's going to be a 2-season thing. And then it didn't end up being a 2-season thing, even though I was so sure, like the pacing is just screaming to me this is going to be a long story. And then it wraps up within those 2 episodes, and we don't really explore much out of Gideon's stuff. And so from just what I have seen, it looks like it's going to be taking on probably what I think are plot threads of the Rangers of the New Republic show. Now, we don't have a lot of information on that, but I think it's clear that with how it ended with Mando and Carson Teva, yes, of course, the Lord Carson Teva, it's definitely pointing to that he has kind of replaced whoever was the main of that show. We could all have our theories, but it seems to be it's going to be the Mandalorian now. It's going to be Din, and that concept as a movie, I think it doesn't have a lot of barriers of entry. You just kind of have to explain, like, okay, there's this Mandalorian with a little Yoda kid that is going to be doing missions for the New Republic. And I don't think that's a particularly hard barrier of entry for newer fans who aren't familiar with the Mandalorian. So yeah, I don't know. On paper, I get it. I just don't know if I necessarily want it. I think what I would rather see is the TV shows become better. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah. I think
like,
we all want that.
Yeah, I would just want, and this isn't to diss anyone who thinks like the TV shows are great. I think I still enjoy like each and every one of the television shows. I just have certain gripes that I feel like can be improved with maybe even more time spent cooking on them. But I don't know. I don't see. I have a better idea of what an Heir to the Empire kind of connective film. I can visualize that much better than what I can visualize for this Mandalorian movie, if that is really the next movie to come out. So yeah, all this to say is I guess I'm a little indifferent at the moment. I just rambled on. I'm like,
that was really great.
I think the thing is we can't really judge what we're losing or gaining by any version. Like if Mando 4, if Mando 4 is season 4 of, if Mando season 4 is still streaming, is it going to be better? Is it going to, as Matthew wants to flesh out things, or John Favreau's gonna be like, nope, season 3 was great. We're gonna stay the course and we're just gonna do wacky monsters and not really give Din much of a character arc.
Villain of the week kind of
Villain
thing.
of the week, which actually might actually
season 2 worked well for Villain of the Week, but.
I mean, yeah, but that's so it was or is it more like season 3 where I feel like it was a weird arc and Din kind of got sidelined really bad, and I felt like Bo-Katan got undercut. Yeah. So it's like, are we really gaining anything or losing anything? And that's sort of the $1 million question. Is we just don't know.
That's the thing is with a film, you kind of have to lead somewhere big, and that's the problem with canon continuity. In this Mandoverse, very tightly packed, right? Because we, like you said, we can envision what this Heir to the Empire film is sort of a series finale. Maybe
I kind of wish it was 2 movies, quite frankly.
Yeah, maybe there'll be an Ahsoka season 2 or whatever afterwards. Yeah, but we can at least envision this sort of a series finale to all these streaming shows. Mandalorian season 4 as a show would be able to build to something big, but over time and slower, and with more opportunity for these Adventures of the Week, more opportunity because to do more character development that he needs more time.
We'd hope,
but he has done plenty. I think with Grogu has forced a lot of that, and that's been the key for that show is that Grogu has forced a lot of growth for Din. But so the adoption scene moving up to all that, even just taking off the mask at the end of those seasons, but with a film, you'd have to pack a lot in. Now you could say pack a lot in different adventures using the act breaks and different things, get to the midpoint and whatnot. I don't know. It just maybe this is the weird thing is it kind of goes against my own intuition about what I want. I'll admit that is I want things to be big and connective and lead somewhere great, but I'd be okay if it takes longer and takes more time. Oddly enough, my point about Eye of Darkness notwithstanding, but but of course that one definitely does. But that's the thing, as in the point being longer and taking time, work to get through it. Yeah, we'll see. Again, we'll see. I'd be happy to be proven wrong.
Right.
I just hope it's worth the cost. If true, hope it's worth the financial cost to Lucasfilm. I mean, they'll be fine. They'll pay it back. That's not a problem.
Oh,
I
Disney
just
can still.
hope. Here's the
They're
thing.
like,
One
they're not
last
going
thing,
to go
though.
bankrupt. I promise.
But
you
again,
that.
I just hope that if this doesn't work, that just like Bob Iger got the wrong lessons from Solo, he doesn't get the wrong lessons from this. And that's like, again, what kind of folks are
I
in
agree
those
there.
boardrooms thinking those things? And is he going to get the lesson? Oh, that the Mandoverse just isn't working at all. Or
It's not
that.
just Bob Iger. It's Kathleen Kennedy. It's Dave Filoni. Like
But I don't think they're going to get the wrong lessons. They understand, but they're not the
do
ones
you think
fully
that
calling
though?
the
I mean,
shots.
you don't know that. I think that's
They could
projection.
have gotten the right lessons before. No, they've definitely. I mean, I trust Kathleen Kennedy and I trust Dave Filoni infinitely more than I trust Bob Iger.
I think that's
calling shots on
projection
the
there.
consistent.
I think that's projection there, my friend. They're all corporates. They're all the C-suits. Dave is a corporate man. That's why he's
Yeah, but he understands the story. He understands the story.
I think he will. You're
I think
overestimating him.
I think it depends on how you see some of like his quotes that he's talked about, and he clearly is passionate, and it's Dave Filoni. I don't know. To me, at least, I think you hit it on the head. I do agree with a lot of what you said in regards to Star Wars isn't just a film franchise anymore, and I do want us to lean more into that. But at the same time, I really miss films. So I'm kind of like trying to balance these two truths in my mind of like how
At
I
least
want
one
it
of
to be.
one of the three of us can actually make any sense. Joel, neither you or I are making sense. Omar, you're the only one here making sense.
We must balance the two, truly.
I mean, what I wanted to say, I kind of lost the point, is, you always say message makes the medium. And I think, I've said this many times, the biggest issue with all these streaming shows, I don't think they treat them like streaming shows. I don't think they're fully taking advantage of the medium here.
Except for maybe Andor.
Yeah, except Andor, and hopefully Acolyte, because that's got a writer's room.
Yeah.
Mando season 1 and 2 did, in my opinion. Season 3 didn't. Book of Boba Fett just weird.
Yeah.
Kenobi, 50-50.
I mean, I think Ahsoka's perfect, but
actually, I think Ahsoka. I don't know. I go back and forth with Ahsoka because, like, I see certain areas like, it's a good streaming show, and they're like, could this be a movie? I don't know, especially with like some of those like episodes.
Also,
3
I think
7.
Ahsoka's perfect the way I think Revenge of the Sith is perfect. Just put it that way. Obviously, I see the flaws, but
But I don't want to get too much into this because we're going to be here all day.
That's true.
We need to do another multimedia Star Wars discussion.
We will.
All right. On that note,
good one.
Very quickly dive right into news we can all be happy about. I think agree on whether or not you're reading the book.
No, Mace would suck. Just kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm glad to know you're kidding.
I love Mace Windu too.
There's a Mace Windu novel coming out. This was a surprise.
I know.
Pop. I'm gonna bring up the cover here. I forgot to bring this up. This is epic. Look at that.
It's beautiful.
I'll just get that there. From StarWars.com, they're excited to reveal Star Wars: The Glass Abyss, new novel coming August 6, 2024, from Random House Worlds. Set after the death of Qui-Gon at the hands of Darth Maul and of Phantom Menace, by the way. Saddened Mace Windu finds himself thrust into an adventure upon receiving a posthumous message from Jyn. The book is a return to Star Wars for author Stephen Barnes, the writer of Legends classic The Cestus Deception, as well as over 30 sci-fi novels and various TV series. According to IMDb, that list of shows really is impressive. Most impressive includes Stargate SG-1, Andromeda, The Outer Limits, Twilight Zone. Guy knows how to spin a mysterious story. I've barely seen much of any of those, but I just know. I mean, I know of those shows. I mean, SG-1 I saw most of. That's not true. So yeah, I mean, the guy knows how to write a story. There's a longer description in the article. Some Qui-Gon, he helped a farming planet before, and he wanted a message sent out on his death to Mace Windu, telling him to go help out. I found the quote from Barnes actually to be more telling, just about what his mindset going into this story. It's a story of mystery. This is a quote: mystery, adventure, betrayal, and romance on a new planet, Metagos, a seething criminal cesspool that was once a thriving and beautiful world, a place where a single supreme warrior willing to risk it all can make the ultimate difference. At times I remember, this is Barnes still talking, remember there's only one goal in writing such a book: to be true to the mythos and thrill the fans, give them the fun, suspense, and heart-stopping action they've come to expect from one of our greatest mythologies, and create more of an inner world for one of the most powerful Jedi in the galaxy. I'm excited for this. This could be great. Yeah, I mean, like we've talked about Joe before, I mean, I got the prequels t-shirt. I'm not wearing it now, but I got the prequels t-shirt, the era, even the whole idea of being a prequelist. I mean, it's only a thing about the positive. Just we're just eating so well these days. And so I'm so happy with that.
Exciting.
Very interesting. The Living Force comes out in May, somewhere in there. So by John Jackson Miller, that's set just before the Phantom Menace. And this is set just after, it's flanking it, just like kind of the Legends novels that flank Revenge of the Sith, I think by James Luceno and John Jackson Miller. No, by Matthew Stover, I think. And so like that trilogy there, there's kind of this trilogy almost. You have and there's a whole bunch of novels kind of set before. I'm really just to get this all this quote of an inner world, because Mace Windu, he seems a bit one-dimensional a little bit. He's just trying to have the lavender lightsaber, be all take it to the man.
Never thought of that from Mace Windu, but
well, or just being at least in Revenge of the Sith,
stickler to the rules.
Stickler to the rules, but also, sorry, not take it to the man. He is the man, but take down the folks who are I mean he doesn't want Palpatine to stand trial because he knows he controls the courts. He's willing to execute him on the spot. That kind of tough guy, almost a thug, a Jedi thug, in a way, to give him an inner world, to see more of what motivates him. Is it a sense of order and justice, or what? Really excited there. Joel, what do you think of this book?
Yeah, I think the thing that stood out to me is like, oh wow, Qui-Gon must really respect Mace enough to give him like, send this to Mace Windu in case of death. Like, hey Mace, I'm dead, but I need your help with this one last thing. Qui-Gon Jinn, it's like, oh wow, he really entrusts Mace Windu out of all people to do whatever he's got to do. So that clearly must mean Qui-Gon knows that, hey, I can trust to do this, Mace Windu.
I mean, it could specifically have to do with a few things. I mean, just the actual situation that needs to be addressed. This criminal cesspool maybe needs a harder hand, a heavier hand. At least Qui-Gon might think so. Also, Mace Windu at this point, he hasn't gone through the Clone Wars yet. This is looking back on Phantom Menace, but also looking ahead to how he becomes more hardened during the Clone Wars, less trusting of Anakin, certainly completely untrusting of Palpatine for good reason. But it's really exciting that we're getting another like Phantom Menace. Also, I forgot to put this in the thing. Time to break out the hashtag, guys. It's gonna be 2024. Phantom Menace came out in 1999. You know what that means? Phantom Menace at 25.
25. Oh my god!
Yeah, all right. Did you feel old already? There you go. Omar, what do you think of this? I know you're mostly a screen guy, but
for me though, like the books I do read in once in a blue moon, a lot of them are Jedi focused. So like anything around the prequels always super interests me. The one that I've missed, unfortunately, was it Knighthood? Brotherhood.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
I missed that one. I need to catch up and read that one. But I love any books in regards to Jedi that we know. And earlier, when I was trying my best to collect all of the paper canon stuff, I read the Mace Windu comic. And I wasn't the biggest fan of it, to be quite honest with you. And so I've kind of since then been hoping for there to be like a really strong canon Mace Windu focused story. And this sounds like it. And it also happens to include one of my favorite Jedi, Qui-Gon Jinn. Even though if he's not there, it's about him still. So I think that's really interesting. And particularly to learn that like Mace and Qui-Gon, who I see as like total opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of like Jedi ideology, to learn that they were close, and that also that there's probably going to be this arc for Mace Windu in reconciling some things about himself and his relation to Qui-Gon and his ideology. I'm mostly curious to see how they're going to handle that. If it is going to end with him thinking maybe more of a rejection of how Qui-Gon thought, which maybe hardens him more, or if he has a new perspective and a new view on said Qui-Gon's beliefs and how he interacted with the Order. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things that I think that could come from this, and I'm really, really excited for it because I'm definitely going to try my best to read this as well as the Living Force, which the other prequel era novel that I'm super excited for. It just off of the summary and premise of that alone, really strong premises for these upcoming books. I would say it sounds exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Again, for Phantom Menace lovers specifically, Mace Windu fans. I mean, he's also getting his own, I believe, Marvel comic, another crack at the comic books. I didn't mind that Marvel comic from a few years ago, but yeah, I mean, it was kind of odd because he definitely is more of the peacekeeper a little bit, and then it switches into, he's leading the Clone War,
right,
to the beginning of the Clone War. So, yeah, great points. Definitely get in terms of relationship with Qui-Gon. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love Qui-Gon? I mean, I love Qui-Gon. So we'll see. Joel, do you have any last thoughts on this Mace Windu, the Glass Abyss?
No, but I'm definitely seeing 2020. But you were really right for Fan Missing, because 2024, two prequel novels. We normally get at least 3 standalones, I think. I think we're due for, maybe we'll have one more that's in the prequel era and have 3 standalone prequel, not Clone Wars stories. That'd be fun.
I mean, and kind of a note you were saying here, is this starting to fill in that gap between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones more?
I hope so.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Alrighty then.
Yeah, right.
We can leave this up. It's so beautiful, but
I know it's so good with the Jedi symbol and all that. It's good stuff.
Time to move on. Joel, I will let you take this away.
The sequel trilogy. Oh wait. Dun 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 dun. 789. 789. 789.
Yeah, there's a song. Okay, I'll give it a context. So, back on the flagship, when they would be discussing news about film episode 7, 8, or 9, that they'd have that song. I don't even know who sung it.
It's a Sesame Street song, I think.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, here we go.
All right. Okay. The sequel trilogy, the themes, the meta narrative. What does it all mean? So I'm going to ask Omar. Omar, simple question for you to begin. What is the overarching theme of the entire sequel trilogy, 7, 8, 9?
That's such a hard question, Joel, and I can't believe you had to ask me that. But see, when you gave me the notes, when you gave me the notes, I was like, I need to sit down and really think about this. And the more like the answer to me, at least, is obvious. But like, I wanted to really think about every kind of connection there is with the sequel trilogy. And so I think like the main overarching theme of the sequel trilogy is to reestablish faith in the Jedi / old institutions that maybe have been viewed in a not as great light because of some of the graying between the two of like light and dark, good and evil. We live in a very gray world. And I think that's very reflecting on in the sequel trilogy as well. And I think both, and we're going to get into the whole meta aspect of it, but both on our screens and behind the screens, I think maybe opinions have changed in regards to how people view the Jedi. And I think by accident or on purpose, I do think the sequel trilogy does a pretty good job in creating, try to show that it's possible to have faith again in some of these older institutions that you should still remain to be wary of, still criticize, but yeah, no, they're still in place because there is good that can come from them.
Now, I like that a lot. I especially think Ryan was hitting on something with that, because I always like to say Luke Skywalker is very much the prequel haters, and even some of the prequel fans, quite frankly, who I think misread the movies, who are like, "Oh, Jedi suck. Time to get rid of the Jedi." Jedi got end because they suck, because the prequels made them suck. Which, you know, we've talked a lot, Matthew, on this podcast of whether or not that was the actual message, or are fans just taking it the wrong way.
Stop overcompensating.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, you know, we have talked about it. I've brought it up several times. Like the whole.
What I mean is my critique of the Jedi being all, I'm coming at this from a real world perspective, where I'm part of religious institutions, and I gotta make sure I'm being adequately critical of them.
Exactly. And then George Lucas just comes to your house and goes, "Stop it, bonk." I'm gonna bonk.
But also, I think it's very important. It's very important to have those conversations, and I think the sequel trilogy touches on that. So, sorry, continue.
No. I agree. I think the sequels are very much responding to those fans. I especially thought Last Jedi was, in particular, those sorts of fan critiques, those sort of fan fears. And, you know, I mean, again, like I said, that's what I like about Luke Skywalker. He is those criticisms that came out of the prequel saying Jedi suck. And then and then, you know, it's like, no, you're wrong, Luke. So I love that. I like that vibe of it. Matthew,
I want to just nuance one thing, and I'll say, I totally get what you're saying. It's not so much institutions, because the Jedi institutions they're gone. I will say, when it comes to the institutions, it might be better to say that that's just how they were at the time. What The Last Jedi specifically, and I love The Last Jedi, but, you know, the Rise of Skywalker does this too. Not so much institutions, but traditions. And I think there's it's a semantic thing, but there's a distinction I think you can make about institutions are kind of accidents of history. You know, the reason my church is organized the way it is, you know, is in some sense of just an accident of inheriting from the Roman imperial system. They had things called dioceses and overseers, and so now 1700 years later, after Constantine, my church has dioceses and bishops and these territorial units that are, you know, all that. But also to say, but there's still a tradition of leadership and oversight, and of with the word we see is oversight, overseers. It's kind of just more Greek, episkopoi, to say, the tradition of both clear leadership and coming together and gathering in council are these traditions that we can interpret and understand in new contexts. And so to say, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, where my mind goes is the real world parallel here is what a lot of indigenous communities do, in that, and I've had to evolve and say it's not a silver lining that, you know, white British missionaries came to Canada and you know, said, here, you all be Christians now, or else we'll kill you. And that's a silver lining that they're Christians now. It's just that they want to be, and it's despite everything that we did, that they're able now to adapt to their own context, and they say, okay, this is meaningful and hopeful, including in all the challenges they face in terms of depression and poverty and and drug abuse, and to say that this institution, it can be a genuinely indigenous institution that carries on the traditions of community and faith that, despite everything, we want to hold on to and evolve in our context. And so, especially The Last Jedi, I think, with Rey, you know, in The Rise of Skywalker, taking the books, taking the wisdom from the books. It's funny because with the books, you have Yoda in The Last Jedi saying to Luke and playing up with Luke, his whole need to burn things down, to let go of the past, let go of his conception of the past, and what happened with the way he's projecting everything that happened with Ben onto the whole Jedi, the Order as a whole. I mean, it's his need to let go, and versus Rey's need to carry on. And that both are true at the same time. And again, The Last Jedi does that more clearly, but I can give Rise of Skywalker some credit there.
Well, Yoda knew those books were already gone, so it's like, I'm just burning down a tree at
He
this
did.
point.
He did. He's just
Yeah.
playing Luke. Right?
He's
That's what he did.
He likes to do
He's a
that.
tricky little guy.
Little prankster,
My
prankster
favorite
Yoda.
scene in the whole film. I love that.
Yeah.
that film.
Oh yeah, it's a great moment. Great moment. And honestly, it might be the moment of the sequel trilogy if we really have to like pinpoint a point. Is that what I would say? Is it grows beyond, and the idea of growing beyond something, the idea of change, I think is incredibly important in the sequel trilogy, because again, there are good things that can come from old things, but the point is to not, as you said, throw out the baby with the bathwater, but it's to grow and evolve. And I think that's beautifully said in probably in all three of them, but in particularly, yes, The Last Jedi. So yeah.
Now, I have a question for you, Omar. And I just saw this, but you're a research guy, so maybe I'm gonna look out, maybe. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Have you read the Duel of the Fates script, and how fresh is that in your head?
Probably not the freshest, but I have read it. Yes. In fact, I did a little comparison in regards to two different drafts, and the second draft being one that was after the passing of Carrie Fisher, and how they had to readjust in order to try to work with that, obviously, that unfortunate circumstance.
Of course, yes. But
so that was about a month ago. So sorry, go on.
Okay, I should have asked you to read it again just in case, but I didn't. So
okay.
that's my bad because I just saw it right now. Do you think that theme sticks even in that Duel of the Fates draft as well? That theme of the institution or the traditions? Because if it does, that to me signifies that there maybe was more of an overarching theme going into this trilogy than people perceive. And I'm curious if by reading any of those versions that you picked up on any of that. If you can't remember, that's fine. We'll just have to go off of. We could just go off of what we have now. But I'm just curious because I do think these thematics are planned out a little bit in advance before the actual movie comes out.
I think the only thing that I'm sure there are instances in that script that can be viewed in that light. But right now, the one thing in the biggest contradiction in my mind that is just popping up is the idea of using both light and dark in this kind of gray, truly a gray Jedi kind of viewpoint that I don't fully agree with, and how it's utilized in that script. Because the answer is, the Jedi should have been embracing the dark this whole time. And I just think that comes from a lack of understanding of like the core tenets of what a Jedi is. The Jedi is balance in my mind. Like I associate Jedi more with balance than light side. They just wield the light side in order to counteract the balance. So because of that whole situation, it makes me think that Colin Trevorrow.
Colin Trevorrow.
It makes me think that Colin Trevorrow wasn't as much interested in. Well, no, that's not true either, because he does end the story with again, it's been a while since I've read it, but he does end the story with the idea of a new form of Jedi that utilizes the dark side. It's along with the light. So again, I don't know. It makes the point, but not in a way that I would have wanted to. And as for other points in that script, I would have to reread it. I don't know if any of the Coruscant stuff that happens would align. There are definitely some similarities. Duel of the Fates is very similar to The Rise of Skywalker in some beats, like very similar. Like I understand why they are credited in the credits of The Rise of Skywalker, because there are a lot of beats that are just the same. So just given different names. But
I mean that happens. It's like if we see hypothetically, hopefully, we see the Ray film and David Lindelof still in the writing credit. Like, oh, I wonder how much of that script they actually
How
did
much
keep.
of that happened?
Uh,
Yeah.
how much,
I
but
mean, just a thought there. How much of the whatever? I mean, I don't remember how much of Mortis is involved in it, but is some of that going to come up in Ahsoka somehow?
very good
kind of
question.
roundabout
Yeah.
way, but
Mhm.
yeah,
It's a very good question.
maybe hard to tell. Again, like I
They
talked
like to
about,
recycle.
yeah.
they do. I mean, like I said when we did our Mortis thing, the thing about why I'm okay with no Mortis in episode 9, and
Sure.
why Filoni's doing it, because I think Filoni's going to do it a little bit more closer to whatever he and George used to talk about, compared to Colin just kind of taking Mortis and doing whatever he
Right.
wanted to
No
do.
doubt.
But
I
that's
know
a whole-
Dave has like a folder somewhere with Mortis stuff that I want to steal.
Oh my gosh,
Oh, I'm sure he does.
I do and I don't. I want to just see the story, but also
fair,
yes, I
yeah.
want to read that. I need that thing now.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. So there's oh yeah, hold on. Yeah, 10 years. 10 years, Force Awakens.
2025.
I
That
know.
actually somehow dates me more than the prequel thing, because I just remember being in college and being super excited for The Force Awakens, and putting the trailer up for all my friends to see in the community lounge at my college. Yeah, just such good times. That's a weird.
Yeah,
it's a weird
2025.
sentence.
It's going to be Rise of Skywalker, Revenge of the Sith at 20, and Force Awakens at 10, which is also wild to think will be equidistant from it'll be, what was I say? Will be the same distance from then to Force Awakens as Force Awakens to Revenge of the Sith.
That's right.
They're only 10 years apart. We call it the Dark Ages. They were only 10 years apart. It doesn't seem that long anymore.
So while
I think it may.
10
I mean,
years.
yeah. I know.
It
I
felt
mean,
long, I'm sure, but
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, look at that. I mean, 83 to 99. If you don't care about any of the books and stuff coming out at the time,
Yeah.
it's like that's a long time. That's Star Wars is
Mhm.
over for you as far as if you're
Sure.
not interested in the book stuff.
Yeah.
But I digress. Anyway, yeah. So great first starter. I guess the next point is, and I'll toss this over to you, Matthew, because I think
Mhm.
I don't want to accuse you like you're the most critical of the sequels out of all of us. But I think before seeing the sequels on the whole,
Mhm.
and I guess maybe after Rise of Skywalker, before, I don't know when we want to date this kind of mentality thinking. Is this the theme that you would have wanted to see going in? Because, and to kind of quote Omar's tweets from earlier, the sequels are this kind of meta thematic, very, you could almost say that they're very influenced by the outside world. I mean, not that Star Wars isn't influenced by the outside world. All Star Wars is influenced by the outside world.
Yeah.
But in a different way compared to, say, the original 6, which is obviously the Vietnam allegory, the Fall Republic, yada, yada, yada.
Mhm.
This is almost influenced by the history of Star Wars as a franchise and the fan discourse around it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I wonder, maybe, Matthew, if that, I don't want to say you struggle, but it's like, is that something that you thought about going in, or were you thinking there'll be more of that in-universe, like, oh, this is now the story of the Iraq War allegory. I don't know. Something I was thinking
The
of.
prequels are the Iraq War, right?
That's true. That's early 2000s. We're still in Iraq in
Just trying to
2010.
situate myself in 2015. 2015
Back in time.
was actually my great transition from being a Trekker to a Star Wars fan.
Okay.
Primarily, and just because, Star Trek was kind of going out the window. It wasn't very relevant anymore, and didn't know what it was. And then along comes Force Awakens and Rebels, and Anaheim, Celebration Anaheim, and just the hype around it, the excitement around it, the marketing. I mean, the way Celebration. That was the first Celebration to be on YouTube and to throw everything on YouTube, and I was glued to it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe looking back, if I thought, I'd say, in contrast to what Star Trek was at the time, I was just said, let Star Wars be clear to itself and what it is. I was thinking about things, I think, in terms of Gene Roddenberry's optimism and how that doesn't track anymore, but also Enterprise and I guess Discovery. I don't know if Discovery came out yet. We had really
It was
gone
after
away.
the Abrams film, so
Yeah. Then the Abrams films were all right, but Enterprise had really kind of gone away from what Star Trek initially was trying to be, but also is that inspiring? Battlestar Galactica is in my mind very clearly at that time, just it had just finished and its cynicism, and to say, okay, let tell Star Wars as this fun, exciting, hopeful story that it was. I was also in the midst of becoming more of a prequelist at that time as well. And so to say, okay, is it going to grapple? I wanted it to grapple with the events of the prequel trilogy as a main story and the themes and ideas that are presented in that tension between here is this institution filled with these characters, Obi-Wan and Mace Windu and Qui-Gon, and trying to do the best they can in this impossible situation, and reflecting on the legacy of Anakin Skywalker and really diving in. I know I've modified this a little more of, okay, the chosen one and the parallels again with real world religious beliefs and whatnot. I wanted it to grapple with it.
Mhm.
And so maybe that's, going in, I can see why I was disappointed by Force Awakens. I was disappointed a little bit by Force Awakens, a little bit by Rise of Skywalker. It really was. Here's the thing. It really was The Last Jedi that gave me what I needed without even fully knowing it. It's like, okay, this is what the sequel trilogy really is doing, is reflecting on, like you say, how we have come to understand what a hero is, how Star Wars has told us what a hero is, how Star Wars has really told us what a hero is and not what we think. And so, to the extent that Rise of Skywalker can pick that up still and say, Rey, she's going to stand up and not actually strike Palpatine down and not actually give in to the power of her bloodline and become a creamsicle Jedi. That's my word for great Jedi, is actually creamsicle Jedi.
Wonderful.
Balin and Shin, whatever they're trying to do. But instead say use his power against him. But also, reflecting on the legacy of Anakin a little more. And so, I mean, that's kind of what I was hoping for going in. And so maybe I didn't fully get that. Again, with Last Jedi, I got something more important. I got something more, more reflective on our real world, and the narrative and discourse around it really pushed it out. Right? It really said. I mean, that's the thing we're talking about, the meta narrative.
Right.
And meta meaning it's this quantum thing of the thing changes as you observe the medium and the message. The content is the audience. The audience of The Last Jedi really became its content. I'll say, maybe to answer your question, what I hoped for versus what I got. I can, again, that's the tricky thing of seeing, and that's where, I mean, I'm open to hearing, how Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker really tie into this. It's a little harder for me to see. I'm not saying I'm critical. I've heard some deeper criticisms of those films, but they're fun. But I want to, I'm open to hearing what you guys have to say about the other two films.
Well, I do think that, I'm going to be honest, I think even Last Jedi doesn't do much. I think it's weird how, like, even Last Jedi weirdly doesn't do what I think most people wanted, which I think people want when they said they wanted more continuity with the prequels, and I think for Last Jedi was enough. But I think what they wanted, like, they did want Coruscant. They kind of did want what Duel of the Fates was giving them. They wanted.
Here's what I'm saying, Joel. Is
Right.
I wanted that, and then Ryan Johnson looks me in the eye and says, do you really want that? Or do you want something? Here's something better, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, yeah. And I think that's what they want for everyone. Like when Palpatine does his little Plagueis thing, I think people wanted full on, Palpatine going, I use the ancient techniques of Darth Plagueis. Look, there's a picture of Darth Plagueis. He's right
Give
there.
us the word
You
midi-chlorians.
look at, you use the midi-chlorians, and then, I got pictures of, like, I don't know, Luke and Leia looking at a picture of Padme because they're missing their mom or something. I don't know. But I think they want some more overt thing, and I think
Yeah.
I think really Colin Gerard was the only one who was like, okay, we'll do the overt thing. Here's Coruscant. Here's Naboo.
And now Filoni and Ahsoka is doing the overt thing, but
Right.
we're getting lots of Coruscant now. But anyway.
Oh yeah, it's Coruscant World. But yeah, and I think both Abrams and Ryan weirdly, especially for the first two especially, kind of like, now we're gonna go more of a meta thing. We're gonna do more like, Rey is not in the smack dab middle of the Star Wars universe. She's is a Star Wars fan. She is a fan of Star Wars. Like, I watched the Star Wars. I know how this works. And exactly. Kylo Ren's kind of the opposite. He is the angry fanboy. He doesn't want to let go of anything, and then he does want to let go. So he's like, I don't want to let go, but I also want to burn it all down. This franchise sucks. I'm gonna go on Twitter and complain, but not be proactive. But I've rambled. Omar, do you want to talk about maybe Force Awakens? Yes. How it contributes to?
I kind of wanted to go off of what Matthew said first, but we could definitely get into Force Awakens. But just off of the idea, because what we're really talking about here is we have two different creatives, being JJ and Ryan, and how they approached telling a Star Wars story. And I think, like what I said, the whole reestablishing the faith of the Jedi, I think that's something that Ryan had in mind in how he told his story. I think JJ had a very different purpose in mind, but accidentally it ended up helping Ryan's case. And so I really do think of, like, whether it was planned or not, I do think there is a coherent thread throughout all of the sequel trilogy. It's just whether or not it was on purpose or not, or it's a read that you can have. And it's the idea that I think the prequels are still instrumental to watching the sequel trilogy. In fact, I would say, like, you should absolutely, like there's some people that say, oh, you could just watch the original trilogy and then the sequel trilogy and you'll be fine. I don't agree with that. And in fact, I dare say, like, you have to watch the prequels and kind of understand how people reacted to the prequels in order to continue. So, sorry, give me 1 second. I'm losing my voice.
Hydrate.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I could talk a little bit while you do that.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to turn on my fan. Give me 1 second.
But I agree with that, because I think, again, with Last Jedi in particular, not quite sure about Force Awakens. I can't wait to hear Omar thing. Luke Skywalker's perspective of the Jedi makes no sense without the prequels, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, it makes no sense. Like, people get all, I mean, I could have, but I'm like,
he literally quotes it. No, he literally says,
right.
He says Darth Sidious.
No, it doesn't even matter about Darth Sidious. It's just like, the whole point is Luke Skywalker is the Jedi hater that came out of the prequels. If you don't have the prequels, well, people probably are going to be happy with the Jedi. They're probably still, in their imaginations, think the Jedi are these cool action-wielding space monks. Instead of,
at the height of their powers, that quote.
Yeah, and they're kind of thinking about, but instead, we still kind of have, again, misconception maybe. It's kind of the boring Jedi Council just kind of sitting there, kind of, dull. They don't allow kids. Mace Windu don't like that kid. I don't like this kid. And it's like, wait. It's sort of like, now we get why Luke Skywalker does not like the Jedi. But go on, Omar. Sorry.
Sorry, I just had to get a drink of water and turn on the fan because it's getting hot in here. But all right, so to follow up on my point, I think J.J. Abrams made The Force Awakens, and this is a view that a lot of people had when it first came out, like, kind of as a response to the prequels, in terms of, like, a return to the aesthetic of the old. We want to get as far away as the prequels as we can, even to the point of not really talking about the politics of it. I think it's a harsh read, but at the same time, it's a little hard to argue in some regard. In how much he kind of went into kind of getting that original trilogy aesthetic. But at the same time, though, there are still shades of gray that have been added that I think you could argue is very prequel trilogy-like. I think it's even though it doesn't like directly tie in, like there's something great in having a character like Finn, who is a stormtrooper turn good. That's a concept that really blurs the lines, and I think that's something that's I'm really appreciative of. And it's that for Kylo being a dark side figure who gets called to the light, and Rey, who is just a reluctant hero, but for like the entire film, and you could even say the entire trilogy, that really I think is interesting, and an interesting aspect of the Force Awakens that JJ kind of brings to the table. That is a good start, and it's a good something that Ryan probably identified early on, and then continued just in a deeper way. Whereas J.J. Abrams was more responding to prequel trilogy aesthetics, Ryan was maybe responding more to the response of the prequels and how people interpreted the Jedi afterwards.
I'll just say this now.
Yeah.
This is the only reason why I would have loved to see Collins episode 9, just because, like, okay, well, JJ did this, Ryan built on that. Then what was Collins' kind of final, like, maybe I guess maybe like, nope, Great Jedi are the thing. That's my answer to how this ends. But go ahead, Matthew, I'm sorry.
Well, first of all, I'll say I think Kathleen Kennedy would have had a word.
She did. She got fired.
She had a word. She had more than one.
Yeah.
I mean, well, Omar, just to, I mean, maybe to help me understand what you're getting at here, and I think I get, this is really, really insightful. It's the theme of embracing traditions while learning to adapt to them. That's an ongoing struggle that is only finally achieved when she's lying on her back and hearing all the Jedi voices. She's actually finally open to it. Yeah, starting out with Rey as the reluctant hero and the reluctant Jedi, going through all the ringer that she does in The Last Jedi to become the place where even the thing she was longing for, her family lineage, that turns out to be the dead. That turns out to be what I think the more displayed is going to be. That doesn't matter. She can still embrace her destiny and confronting fear. Yeah, no, that I definitely. It's a dynamic thing. It's a struggle. It's a fight. It's learning, because in our day, especially in our age, and there's the meta story, we're told either you hold on, you conserve for the sake of conserving, or you innovate for the sake of innovating. You do neither. There's no sense of we're supposed to actually have the wisdom to respond in the present with the resources we have and the creativity we have, and so it's a struggle of millennials and Gen Z and younger generations, Gen Z, younger generations to say, no, wait a minute, okay, boomer, like we can actually take what we've learned, including failure. Failure isn't a terrible thing. We can also take the wisdom and insights that you've developed through whatever of previous decades and generations, but also, this is the world we're in, and it is terrible in some ways, but also beautiful, and the open possibilities of, we can be in 3 different corners of a continent and in real time having a conversation like this on the internet, different things, just the capabilities and possibilities. It's a matter of growth and maturity, and it takes time, and to see Rey, that's the thing I say, the biggest strength of the sequel trilogy is that its main character is its most compelling character, right?
Yes,
my favorite character of the sequel trilogy is the main character, which you don't often say, right?
It's true.
Often here, but she actually is, and so there's something that she actually comes to embrace. Okay. I see more deeply.
Okay, so I'll make a point, and then I'll kind of throw it to Omar for the next part.
Yeah,
I do wonder if, and maybe Matthew, this is another thing when we talk about what you got versus what you want, and obviously your prequels, and maybe because we were so used to the prequels, and I'll kind of go over this again. The prequels do kind of have I would argue, I mean, I will say that not in a bad way, just like, I think a more obvious and maybe more heavy-handed thematic, like almost like on a grander societal level, like, this is how republics fall. like this how to be
Like
done.
George Lucas whacking you in the face with it.
While sequels,
Yeah.
maybe, and maybe why people have trouble with this to a certain extent, I don't know, is the prequel themes are a lot, and I think the prequels in general, I would say the prequels are better at this than the sequels are better than the prequels, and this is where I think the originals kind of have the balance. Sequels, I think, just have more I don't want to say, kind of more poignant characters that are a lot more easily identifiable from the get-go. I mean, that's what relatable characters. I think the themes kind of work a lot more about the characters. It's a bit more micro of a theme where it's like it's not about like here's the grand sweeping societal thing about the galaxy. There's a little bit of that, but it's more concentrated in one person, aka Rey, and a little bit of Kylo, and a little bit of Finn and Poe. I mean, they could get used to more, but it's definitely a lot more there. And I think compared to the prequels, which are a lot more, here's how the Republic fell and became the Empire. Although I think Episode 3 kind of got that Anakin characterization pretty down. The sequels are a lot more micro than macro in their storytelling. And Omar, I'll toss this to you, and also if you want to kind of explain how, maybe for all its faults or not, Rise of Skywalker actually is able to make this theme possible, because obviously I think it's the third one that kind of decides what the actual theme of the whole thing is, in my opinion. So I'll leave you with those thoughts, and I'll let Omar, you just talk about Rise of Skywalker and how that plays into this theme.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say whenever I've had the opportunity to sit and like write about the sequel trilogy, like whether it be a script, something that I try to like make tangible into like my words, into even like just Twitter thread, I always find myself first analyzing the characters, because I do think the characters, probably more so than any of the other trilogies, are kind of the core of what the sequel trilogy is. Like, it's the story, essentially, is their arcs. Each individual character's arc is just the story of the entire sequel trilogy. Like, if you even compare it to, like, say, the prequel trilogy, I think it's easier to say, like, here are the grand events that happened in the galaxy in the prequel trilogy. Like, here's Order 66. Here's when the war started. Here's where blah, blah, blah. And the sequel trilogy isn't as much interested as, like, here's the start of the First Order conflict. More so it's saying, like, here's the characters and here's how they evolve from everything that is happening. But everything that is happening isn't that important. All you need to know is that these characters are stand-ins for you as an audience member to be inside the world of Star Wars. And
kind of like Mando in season 2 and 1.
Yeah. Like there's a lot of, like, exactly for that. But yeah. So in that regard, yes, the Rise of Skywalker does kind of bring everything together. I think later on I'll kind of talk about more of the Hegel's method, which is something that we'll get to. But I think the Rise of Skywalker does have a combination, a synthesis in terms of a lot of ideas that both The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi have. And again, like I talked about before, The Force Awakens kind of deals with more of the aesthetics of what Star Wars is, and The Last Jedi kind of deals more into the discussion of what Star Wars is. And I think together... Yes, exactly. And I think together with The Rise of Skywalker, which is interesting, The Rise of Skywalker does something very interesting, in my opinion. Much like George Lucas, who doesn't believe in subtlety, J.J. Abrams kind of comes up and says, hey, do you know, like, this kind of metaphorical era, the area that we've been kind of living in with the sequels? What if everything metaphorical became literal? And that's kind of what he does for a lot of the story. Not just JJ, obviously. It's Chris Terrio as well, who is the main writer as well. But what I like to kind of always go to is that for Rey, the darkness that Luke saw in her in The Last Jedi, and Rey's entire insecurities in taking the hero role, in taking that lightsaber, it's as if they looked at that and said, okay, let's take all of those aspects of Rey that can be seen as negative. Let's manifest that into a single character, and let's call him Palpatine. Let's also just have Palpatine in here. And then because that's what he is. He's
Yeah.
the source of that darkness for Rey that we've seen in The Last Jedi. And what more insecurity can you have for Rey than what she already had, than to say that she's related to the devil? And that's what Palpatine is in this narrative. He is the devil. He is the dark side, made
The
form.
rotting corpse.
Exactly. Like, I mean, again, very literal. He doesn't believe in metaphorical anymore. JJ is like, we're going to be very literal with this. And in much the same way, Kylo also, like, again, he has a darkness that in him that promises him power. Now, all of a sudden, he gets to meet Palpatine, who, guess what he promises him as soon as he meets him? Power. Not just power, an instant win button that would allow him to just control the galaxy. An entire fleet that would just have him be the most powerful person in the universe. So, and also, again, to feed into the whole idea of metaphorical becomes literal, Snoke is a literal Palpatine clone.
Oh, wow. I've never thought about that way.
That's
I mean,
true.
obviously not
made
a
the
literal. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it was a joke. It was. I mean, it was a very ongoing joke that you could say Snoke as a character was just a Palpatine clone. Well, you're not too far off. So
That's funny.
yeah,
Strand cast.
Exactly, a strand cast. Yeah.
I mean, I'll say, I'll sorry, no, you're good.
Oh, well, no, the only thing I was going to end with is the idea that it kind of heals as well. And maybe this is more a personal thing for The Rise of Skywalker. It kind of heals some aspects of both the prequels and original trilogy that maybe because of, you could say, retcons, things kind of became more muddled. With the original trilogy, I wasn't a big fan of Leia being a Skywalker. Like, just on its own. On its own in that trilogy, I wasn't the biggest, like, oh, wow, that doesn't do much for me in the whole narrative of the original trilogy. But that is handled very well, I think, in The Rise of Skywalker, as well as it could without actually having Princess Leia there, which you have Carrie Fisher there. She's given purpose, and also the idea of her lightsaber being handed to Rey. Leia was always going to be the other, well, not always, behind the scenes shenanigans. She was going to be the other Skywalker in the original trilogy, and now the role of the other Skywalker has been passed on to Rey, which is why I really love the Rey Skywalker ending. There's a whole lot of really interesting behind the scenes stuff of like how that character was originally a sister that never came to play, and then kind of handed it off to Leia's character, and now finally we have it in Rey, and I think that's really interesting. So that's the original trilogy kind of heel, is what I like to call it. And then you have the prequel trilogy heel, which is, if you're watching these in release order, you have, which is how most people did watch them, at least as they were coming out. You have the original trilogy and you have Darth Vader's redemption, which is kind of handled, again, incomplete in that trilogy. The prequel trilogy gave context to it, but in doing so, it ended up adding aspects that you could say haven't fully been resolved, which is the connection to the mother and the connection to the lover. That's something that is addressed in the sequel trilogy with Kylo Ren. I always said Kylo Ren is a character who is a reverse, and he's even said this, I think, in some interviews, that he's like a reverse Vader arc. Well, a step further, I think he's a reverse prequel Anakin arc. Like, there's even a turning point where the mother dies, much like Shmi died, only it turned Anakin dark. In this situation, when Princess Leia passes, it's actually a turning point for Kylo to revert back to Ben. And then, of course, we might have talked about this before in the past, but in regards to the whole idea, or like the last time I was on this broadcast, but just the idea of Kylo doing finishing what Vader started, and the kind of connecting that to Anakin wanting his lover to live after childbirth. But in this situation, it is reviving Rey from the depths of hell, essentially, which just her dying there, essentially, on Exegol. So that's There's a lot going on with Rise of Skywalker
Yeah,
that I
yeah,
really
no
like.
kidding.
And sorry, so this was a very long
No, all good. It's great.
discussion. But I just wanted
We
to
should get a
say,
clip
like,
of that.
yeah,
Sorry.
it's really good. I like the Rise of Skywalker for what it tries to do. Maybe not entirely in its execution. I have a lot of complaints in terms of its execution. But it kind of does look at the previous entries as well as the entire Skywalker saga in kind of a smart way, at least if it was on purpose, which I hope it was. But even if it wasn't, this is what I get from it, and that's what I'm holding on to. So
Sometimes lots of Star Wars is by accident and on purpose, I think so.
That's probably true.
Hey, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
curious.
I just
What
wanna
Matthew?
say-
Yeah.
I mean, I did like Ray from Nowhere better in the sense of what Ryan would say about that's the thing she fears the most.
Mhm.
But if the reality is Ray Palpatine, okay, what we have, especially when you said, okay, make her that and embody that darkness, my mind went to the Death Star scene and the vision and how of who she could become. I mean, there's the creamsicle Jedi right there. That's what happens when you become a creamsicle Jedi. You become a Sith. I mean, there's just to my mind,
Right.
it's just not stable and not a stable situation. And so her carrying on that tradition of that to me is what serving the light is about. Is maintaining the discipline of not giving into the dark in part, resisting fear, going forward. Yeah, I mean, especially want to go back to the point about how both you and Joel were saying, the prequels, it is a grander story. It's a more operatic story, literally operatic and otherwise, truly deeply in John Williams' score. And these larger than life characters. And, with Rey especially, well, here's the parallel is, Anakin's like Superman and Batman or whatever, the DC thing of being these larger than life and less accessible characters. Along comes Stan Lee and gives us Peter Parker, right? Literally the guy next door. Rey is not the girl next door, but the younger sister, your best friend's younger sister, or whatever.
Young whippersnapper.
Or somebody, like somebody you can relate to, somebody who then has these things within her, this darkness within her, because we all have our darkness within us. But also, I mean, the Palpatine, thing. I mean, we all have this lineage of here I go, theology time. The idea of a lineage of sin, of being human. I mean, Palpatine is also all of our humanity in the darkest way, and so we all have to confront it. And Rey confronts it on behalf of the galaxy. I mean, Anakin confronts it on behalf of the galaxy. I mean, that's the Christian story is actually we don't confront it ourselves. Jesus confronts it on behalf of humanity. Again, bringing the parallel in. Yeah, I mean, it is a more personal appropriation of the theme, is maybe what to say. Through Rey's own story, through her own journey, Luke does that to some extent. I'll say. I mean, it does mirror what Luke is doing. With Anakin, interesting you bring up Kylo and Anakin. Kylo and Rey, and Ben and Rey, I should say, they both appropriate it personally. Luke appropriates personally. I mean, Anakin is intentional. I'd say it's the other way around. Anakin's actually the opposite. Is intentionally the opposite of Luke and of Rey and of Kylo. He's the before picture, and his fall to the dark side. And then, I mean, with Luke, he does return and is the one who confronts evil and confronts fear for the sake of the galaxy. But yeah, it's a really what I'll say. It speaks to what the different functions of these trilogies are meant to do and meant to be. Yes, I don't know where to sit on this. I mean, the sequel trilogy, it's meant to reflect on the thesis antithesis between the two other trilogies. I know we can get there in a minute, but also carry on that legacy. Does it mirror the arc of the original trilogy a little too closely? Is that kind of where the the aesthetic of The Force Awakens really drives home? Is that this is a reboot, if you will? But I mean, I guess the question: what is different about Rey than Luke?
Then Luke.
She is more explicitly Jedi. I'll say this. She at least even more
I think there's a lot.
explicitly engaging the I mean, now this is because Empire Strikes Back comes out before the prequel trilogy, before Clone Wars. But yeah, I mean, in The Last Jedi, you see the Jedi sigil. You see this logo here on the books there. Yeah, I guess there is a more explicit appropriation of these traditions and these institutions, even that Luke wasn't around to do. And so, it's all that like I'm a Jedi, like my father before me. Luke Rey is able to say I'm a Jedi. It's I get the point of it would be more personal appropriation.
I mean, I'll go as far as to say I think Rey's more like Anakin than she's like Luke, if I'm being perfectly honest. She doesn't want to go on these adventures. The whole point of Force Awakens is like, I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home.
Right. So she's kind of the anti-Luke.
She's also more aggressive. She's like during some of those duels, like she's like Kylo Ren's lucky she didn't die. Like she's ready to cut his head off half the time. So she got more of an aggressive side to her already. She gives into her anger quite a bit. Even in Last Jedi, she's like sick of Luke's shenanigans, so she's like, I'm just gonna whoop this guy's butt. Like I'm sick of this old dude. Finally, like Luke, get off your butt, or I'm just gonna whack it with my
frustrated.
stick.
She's
frustrated. Even in the Colin Trevorrow episode 9, the whole darkness thing, which kind of was lackluster still. So it's sort of like you got kind of two. You either got a literal she's a Palpatine, or in Duel of Fates, it's like, oh, Rey's just very aggressive and angry. She's just cutting down stormtroopers left, right, and center. Like the first scene's like, she doesn't care about the stormtroopers. Like, nope, dead, slash. I think she was honestly way more nicer in episode 9 to the stormtroopers, quite frankly. I mean, maybe she shot a couple down, but like, I don't remember in the Duel of the Fate script, she's like just slashing them all down. Like, they're human beings. It's like, she's just, nope, they're dead. So already got that kind of aggressive side to her. I mean, that's why I think in a lot of ways, both Kylo and Ben and Rey are more mirrors of Anakin than they even are mirrors of Luke in a lot of ways. Just different sides of them, him in a weird sense. But Omar, we talk a lot about the hero journey and all that stuff, but we do want to talk about a different style of storytelling, the Hegel theory of storytelling.
Yeah. I'm gonna patent this and make it my ring theory, like
ring theory.
That prequel theory, ring theory, that was big all those years ago. But no, it's the idea of George Hegel, who is another George from a different time. The Hegelian dialectical method. I'm gonna just read this quick little
philosophy time with Omar.
He's
a 19th century philosopher
guy, but I'm just going to read this Wikipedia article to you. So the dialectical method describes changes in form of thought through their own internal contradictions into concrete forms that overcome previous oppositions. It's essentially the process of having a thesis idea, an antithesis, contrary idea, and through the conflict of those two forces, you form a synthesis. And through a lot of reading I have read, I have found that it doesn't necessarily need to be the combination of these two ideas, but it's what results from the conflict of these two different ideas. So a lot of people kind of can see it as like a melding, and it can be, but it's mostly like what becomes after the conflict of these two ideas, kind of the spark, if you could say, and what it can create from that. So I came across this idea of thesis, antithesis, synthesis shortly after probably The Last Jedi, because I was just thinking to myself, man, The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, I enjoy both of these films, but they are very different films. It feels like they come out to say like these different things, and as a lot of people, because this was after The Last Jedi, so there's a lot of conversation going around online. A lot of people kind of saw it as like two different directors fighting it out in their own series, and I always think like there's always a little truth to it, but not in the way that most people think, is what I always kind of think. And that's kind of where I came to the conclusion of, if all of this is on purpose, then perhaps there is going to be like a synthesis of ideas within these two films. Now, I haven't really changed my mind. I don't think a lot of it is on purpose, to be quite honest with you. But regardless, it's something that I think can still hold true through all three films. And in fact, what is it? Sorry, Chris Terrio actually did mention the word synthesis in one of his interviews. So that gave me a little hope to say, yes, I was right. Omar was right about this. So it's the idea of, again, conflict in regards to two opposing things that result into a new something. And in this regard, because the sequels are so character focused, as I said before, it's all about those character arcs. What conflicts with what in order to create the end goal of the character arcs. And it's not as simple, I think, as The Force Awakens is the thesis, The Last Jedi is the antithesis, and The Rise of Skywalker is the synthesis. Like, it's not as simple as that, I think. Because in The Force Awakens, you do have some, as I mentioned before, you have some shades of gray with some of the characters that you can probably classify as more antithetical to what Star Wars is, And okay, so the Last Jedi has I think a lot of instances of synthesis, like at the very end. A lot of people end up saying like, oh, you could end with The Last Jedi. Some of them are saying that for not so nice reasons, but others are saying it as in like, hey, this does feel like an end of some kind of for some of these character arcs. And yeah, there are aspects of synthesis within The Last Jedi. And The Rise of Skywalker, I think the main aspect of it that is synthesis, because The Rise of Skywalker, in my opinion, kind of repeats some of the things that The Last Jedi does, and just kind of packages everything in more closer to the Force Awakens package, is kind of how I describe it. But I do think Rey Skywalker is the main synthesis idea. And to break it down, Rey starts off aspiring to myths. She is the one who saw the original trilogy and was inspired by it. That's the thesis. The antithesis is Rey's arc of rejecting the hero role because she doesn't believe in herself. And you can argue like some of that with Luke is a projection of that, where Luke starts saying about how the Jedi aren't as great as what they should be. I think you can connect that to Rey's own inner struggle of like, am I worthy to even be a Jedi if Jedi aren't even something that I should aspire to be? And you have these conflicts of interest. And what is the answer? That results from the two ideological clashes. We went back to it earlier. It's Yoda saying you grow what you grow beyond the original thought. And that's the idea of Rey Skywalker. Hello?
Uh-oh.
You're just quoting. No, we are what we
That's
grow
not
beyond.
good.
We're good. Keep
Oh,
going.
okay.
Oh, no.
Okay.
We're good.
I'm frozen.
Okay.
You
So
guys
yeah,
are frozen.
Rey
That's
Skywalker.
not good. You're back.
Rey Skywalker. Okay, I'm back. Okay, cool.
No, you're back, Joel.
Okay.
Oh, I'm back.
Oh,
All right.
Joel had the thing. Okay,
Sorry,
I was
keep
so
going.
confused, guys. I was like, because I've been having internet issues this entire week, so I was really worried.
No, we're
Okay,
good.
okay.
Keep going. Keep going.
But okay,
Go.
it's the idea that Rey Skywalker is the synthesis of these two ideas. Because it, again, she like a lot of people tend to focus on the idea of her name and her lineage and stuff. I think it's less about that and more about her accepting the hero role within herself. And that's why Skywalker is kind of a bigger thing to me. Her taking the name, it's not because of adoption. I see a lot of people go to the defense of adoption. I don't really care about adoption. Like, no offense to everybody who has that connected. Like, obviously, if you see yourself in that connection, you see yourself represented. That's great. In my opinion, in my read, it's less about that. It's more about her accepting the role of the hero accepting that the saber that called to her was always meant for her. And that is the synthesis in the contrasting ideas that kind of have been presented to her. And just to kind of go off of some of the other characters, like really quickly,
Yeah.
Finn and Poe, I think, have their synthesis moment in The Last Jedi. Finn is someone who leaves the First Order. It's very, again, very inspirational thing that he does. At the same time, though, he only wants to save himself and those that he deems are his close friends. He doesn't want to fight for what's right. And it isn't until he kind of gets contrasting views from Rose and also DJ that he starts to consider, oh, maybe I am in this. In order to save what I love, I should be standing up to this thing that has been oppressive of me. So to me, that is his synthesis moment. Poe stepping up as leader, but while still maintaining true. Poe himself is a big, like the contradiction there is that he is a classical hero, but at the same time, like the reality of that situation is you get people killed sometimes when you're acting as a leader in this classical hero narrative. And the goal of a resistance is to be able to survive and in order to fight another day. And again, there's a lot of really great stuff with Holdo there. But I'm just going to brush over these real quickly. Ben saving Rey from death. Again, that's another something. Kylo wanting to finish what Vader started is the thesis. His feelings for Rey is the antithesis. Ben saves Rey from death is the synthesis. All these aspects, all these characters have their thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis moment. And the Jedi themselves being able to grow beyond is their synthesis as well. So, and of course, hopefully, I hope that the Rey movie follows up on that, and we're able to see just how beyond they have grown. So, that's my spiel. That's my spiel on the whole Hegel's theory, Hegel's sequel trilogy, as I like to say.
Yeah.
It's I think there's a lot there. It's just an alternate way to view these character arcs outside of the typical hero's journey. Which, hey, the hero's journey is baked into Star Wars. But that doesn't mean there can't be alternative ways to maybe view some of the stuff.
I mean, I'll say it does seem connected to the hero's journey a little bit in that you start off with an idea and then that gets challenged.
Yes.
But also it's different in that maybe the hero's journey doesn't start off with the idea. It's that the hero's journey finds the idea partway through. So I mean, it definitely it gives more credence to what is set up in The Force Awakens. I'll say the Hegelian idea, and it allows it to be more individual. I mean, my issue with the hero's journey is
I have issues too, so don't worry.
My main issue with the hero's journey is it's all you too can be the hero of your own story if you just go and find yourself. Whereas, again, here's a thesis, synthesis, antithesis, synthesis, right? Hegel seems to say we inherit these theses, and then we go and live and test them, and we find, we go in and see the limits of them, and then we find, okay, here's how we inherit the thesis, the theses, the traditions, but evolve them, adapt them to our current situation. Yeah, I mean that's just it with Rey and the Skywalkers, maybe, and this will be a bit of reiterating. I'm just gonna name them reiterating so I understand and so I grasp what you're getting at here. Rey. Again, I'm not trying to take away. I'm just repeating so I can understand what you're saying here. Are you saying Rey? She sees these films. She knows these legends. Knows these legends, these stories. She says, "Oh, I want to go and be a Skywalker," and then the antithesis is, "Oh, but I'm Rey from nowhere, nobody, or even worse, I'm Rey of Palpatine. I can't be at all." And then the synthesis is, it doesn't actually matter. And this she starts to come to this. I mean, that baptism moment in the middle of the Last Jedi, she starts to come to this, saying, "Doesn't matter. The lineage doesn't matter." And for the Jedi to say, your midi-chlorian count only matters a little bit. look how midi-chlorians can be abused, all that stuff that they don't actually name in the movies, but that's okay. It's okay because it doesn't really matter as much. It's what you're willing to embrace and join up with. I mean, that's the thing. It isn't entirely individualist either. It's you're willing to join up with this resistance that of folks who, I mean, to me, the moment, oddly enough, of the sequel trilogy and especially the Last Jedi, it is goodness, Rose. Wow, sorry,
Fighting what we
Rose
hate,
telling
or
Finn,
fight what-
it's not Rose. Finn's like, oh, I gotta go be the hero. I mean, here's an antithesis. Crash with the spears, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But then in that very moment, she says, "This is how we win, not by killing what we hate. That's not what a hero does.
Right.
The hero saves what they love." And that whatever that looks like in the moment, that's what a hero is meant to do. For Luke, I mean, Luke gets there too, right? He goes and he stands in front of the First Order, seemingly with a laser sword. He doesn't make a single blow. It's the only Star Wars film where there's no clash between two lightsabers. He does it so he can let the rest of the resistance go free, so that Rey can then go and fully embrace herself and go through this trial, seeing she's a Palpatine and letting go and saying it doesn't matter. That all the Jedi are with her, and she joins in with that tradition. Yeah, that's really. I never thought. I mean, Hagel's kind of tricky, but I never thought it would be that compelling.
For sure. I think, and just as you were talking, I was just thinking about like the difference between that and say the hero's journey. I think Hagel's method is more akin to developing ideas, and in this situation, it kind of serves the sequel trilogy more because it's this is a meta conversation about ideas, about arcs, about like these characters being metaphorical for some kind of idea that it wants to convey to the audience. So in this regard of a meta like chessboard, it's probably or a meta landscape, it's probably better to say like Hagel's kind of it's easier to connect than a hero's journey in that regard.
Like you said, sorry.
No, that's it.
Well, so like you said, it's like The Last Jedi doesn't retcon, and they're not, I mean, maybe it's accidental, sure, but there's ways of connecting these three together. Yeah.
Right. So, and I think we'll start wrapping up. I just want to kind of like have one last final point, and then we'll start wrapping up here. Is
For sure.
I think what's really interesting about now this 9-part saga is
I'm just pushing these up. Keep
talking. Is even with Lucas's 6 films, we have 3 separate trilogies that are very different. And I wonder if that, and I do think, I think that is one of the big reasons why certain fans can have this kind of either outright just hatred or just kind of like, I'm not sure about that, because you have the original trilogy. So I think that is more the typical hero's journey. It's grand and epic, but I also think it's really small in a weird sense. It can be, that's the weird thing about the original trilogy. It's both grand and small. If you really think about it, it's very, you have the prequels, which is Lucas like, okay, we're going to do a different trilogy. Grandeur. It's a Greek tragedy. It's, kind of this big epic. And then weirdly, I would even argue the sequel trilogy is even smaller. It's even more character based. It is kind of less about, it's just about young people kind of growing up in a weird way and kind of, and it's very almost overly relatable. Although I would say Luke is probably relatable to an audience in 1970.
Yeah.
But almost more, and kind of like dealing with the legacies of the older generation, even more so than maybe even the original trilogy was, quite frankly. And I think that even being 1 through 9, I think it kind of maybe gets people whacked out because, like, okay, it's supposed to be one thing, and in 6 of those cases, you got the same guy doing 6 of those. But for 3 of those, he decided, you know what, I'm gonna do something completely different. I'm gonna make a Greek tragedy, different vision. Get out of here, Kurtz. No one likes you. And then obviously, with the sequels having even 2 directors, it's like even more wackier. So it's like you have 9 films, but they kind of all kept this difference between at least 3 of them. It's kind of like 3 cutoffs, and I wonder if that just makes it whack. I mean, I love it. Of course. But Matthew, I'll throw it to you. Can you just get that thing?
I mean, again, one is, I guess the purpose of the originals was just to, first of all, to set up this world, and then to tell this hero's journey, Luke's story, George incorporating, everything from Campbell to Flash Gordon to Kurosawa to whatever, and then he goes back and tells this Greek Roman epic that also has Italian opera in it, that has more explicit, I'd say, Christian ideas and in questions and institutions, and then you have and also the original trilogy, Empire Strikes Back, is a lot more Eastern in its the way Yoda talks about the Force, and that meditation more explicitly mystical and contemplative. Then you have the sequel trilogy, which, like you said at the top, it's meant to reflect back on all this, meant to take it in and say, what do we do now? What do we say now? What kind of Star Wars story do we tell now? All that. One thing I thought about, though, is, and this is George Lucas bursting in here. It's 4 p.m. on Sunday. I got to go get to church. my church is at 5 p.m.
George, stop waking him up.
Like, stop complaining about the Jedi. Go to church. And he's got Ewan McGregor and James Arnold Taylor with him. And James Arnold Taylor and I could literally go to church. Obi-Wan Kenobi, especially in Revenge of the Sith, and he gets a bad rap too. I don't quite know why. I mean, he kind of fudges things, from a certain point of view, and all, whatever. Like I was saying, I find him very relatable. He's kind of my self-insert character there, in that same reason why, with, say, The Last Jedi, this question of, here's a time of great turbulence and great upheaval and great uncertainty, that uncertainty in our traditions, in our institutions, and yet here I am at the front, having to and being in positions where I've had to embody the institution and be in part of a leadership in a community, and say, okay, well, this is what the Bible is saying, and this is what our traditions are saying to our current time and to right now. And so if there's anyone who, oddly enough, he embodies that's what he knows Anakin's the father. He knows that he knows that everything's crumbling around him, with the Sith have taken over, and the Jedi Order as a whole have created this stigma against Anakin that's pushed him away. He knows, if Satine had just said the word, he would have been gone too, all that. He, in the end, is still, except for what we see at the beginning of Kenobi, but also that's his arc there. He's still, you say, okay, how do we keep Luke and Leia alive? How do we preserve the light? And I'm going to give up everything I've known and go spend 20 years on Tatooine just watching over this kid in the hope that something new will emerge. And it does. And and that's the amazing thing. And so, I'm going to keep these traditions alive in a way, but also to say, okay, I can't fully embrace them. I can't try and start a new council, a new order, because that's a different situation. We're a different world. It's, I wield my lightsaber in public, I get executed by an inquisitor. If there's anyone who takes on the themes, I think, of The Last Jedi and of the sequel trilogy in the prequels, and into Kenobi, especially in his arc overall, and into the beginning of A New Hope, it would be Obi-Wan, I think. So there's the through line. There's a connection, right?
That's a good through line. Not gonna lie. I'll just let Omar respond to what I said, and then we'll wrap up in terms of a 9-movie saga. It's supposed to be one thing, and yet each kind of trilogy is kind of really doing kind of its own weird little thing.
Yeah. Just real quick on Matthew. You know, I always found it really cool that it was Obi-Wan in Rey's Force vision that would say these are your first steps, and then later said these are your final steps. I just think that's really cool. I think there's something there that can be analyzed and looked up. Exactly, prequelists and sequelists unite.
Yay!
Like even if he's not in this narrative, he's still his presence can still be known in kind of the themes and also whatnot. So to answer your question, though, that's why everyone thought Rey was a Kenobi. That is very true. I remember a lot of theories about that.
She embodies.
So in regards to like, you know, people wanting the sequel trilogy to have been something probably more akin to, what was it? Legacy of the Force? Was that probably the
Or the prequels
closest?
itself.
Yeah, of course, the prequels itself. But I mean, for like a Legends, for like a
Legacy
Legends,
probably too. I know
Legacy probably too. For it to have been something like that, or something again, like you said, the prequels. Kind of how I see the Skywalker saga is like the center is of course the original trilogy, and what kind of branches out first is the prequel trilogy, which kind of is like the first branch of it, and it just kind of goes into the backstory that is to inform the original trilogy. Like the purpose of it is to inform it so that you can watch it and then later go back into the original trilogy and be like, okay, I understand how these pieces fall together. The sequel trilogy does not act in that way. It is not the same idea of taking like, okay, let's explain what happens before the original trilogy, and now let's take what happens after, see the results of the original trilogy. It doesn't really care about the results of the original trilogy. It pretty much resets everything back to square one in the original trilogy, if you think about it. So like it's more thinking about, as we have said numerous times in this podcast so far, it's about talking about Star Wars, and it's talking about the reaction, the very real world reaction to it. And for another one of my famous metaphors here, I think of it as like three paintings. Only that third painting's not really a painting; it's an essay stapled to the wall.
It's a triptych, but it's a weird one.
Yeah, it's like, oh, cool painting. That's just an essay stapled to a wall. What is that about?
It's art. It's art.
But exactly, if you read the essay, though, you will find a really interesting freaking essay. So maybe there is something to it. And I'm that weirdo who likes reading the essay on stapled to the wall. You know, I'm that weirdo. But I also, but I also completely understand, and this is actually kind of to wrap up the point. I understand people wanting that third painting to have been on the wall. I understand to have like completed a set of like three paintings that all kind of flowed into each other in a certain specific way. I understand that mentality, and I've gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, you wanted that. I completely understand it. I think there are people that think that, and they don't act in bad faith. There's a lot of like bad faith actors who dislike on the sequels. But I do think people that genuinely just wanted a continuation of the original trilogy, not to necessarily act in bad faith in what they originally wanted. And I think that's fine. I think that's completely understandable that they have their gripes and what they wanted. I will say this. I'm happy. I love that they dedicated 3 movies to this discussion idea, this meta narrative. I don't think they should do it again. I think from now on, everything should just be what it is and be a continuation. And that's where I think almost everyone can agree with. I love what we got. I love it. I'm always going to go back to these and the thoughts that I had within those several years of theorizing and several years of analysis. But I'm very satisfied in terms of meta discussions here. Let's definitely take the next step forward. And I think, again, it's a perfect place to do so with a Rey story going forward. Anything to push the timeline forward beyond episode 9, I'm very excited for. So
yeah, don't do a meta story. Although we did kind of almost say that maybe Filoni is going to do somewhat of a meta story with Mortis 2.0.
I mean,
but
that's not to say there's not meta elements in stories. I think that's fine. I think meta elements are always welcome in stories. I just think to the degree of what the sequel trilogy was, I think I really do think you almost have to view it in terms of a meta narrative, otherwise you might be disappointed.
Mhm.
No, I agree. I think you
Yeah.
shouldn't do that again, or at least don't do it again until you got another 50, 60
Yeah.
years behind you.
Let's wait some
Hey, yeah,
time.
Yeah, exactly.
give it
I
50,
will
60
say,
years. Yeah.
I mean, like you said, there will always be meta elements. I mean, the Rey film will always be a reflection on what the Jedi should be.
Mhm.
And that is in its own way a reflection of what Star Wars should be, what Star Wars is. Yeah, like Joel, you were just saying, I think Dom's been saying this. We are getting that reflection on what the actual story of the in universe reflection on the stories of the Skywalker saga, of the Lucas saga, I should say. I mean, Ahsoka really starts to do that, especially both. I mean, Ahsoka, but also Siege of Mandalore arc. Starting to play what the prequels are. I do think all the Rebels characters in Ahsoka are going to reflect on what happens in the original trilogy. I mean, I think Hera, especially, who experienced it all so deeply. I mean, maybe someone like Carson Teva. I mean, seeing what Carson Teva and Hera. I mean, I think with Hera's line about how to Ziono, like you sat on the sidelines, I was in it and I fought in it, and those are the implications of it.
Yeah.
If I go on the Empire, of course, Ahsoka has already deeply, in a very personal way, reflect on the legacy of Anakin and Vader. Are we going to see something with Luke? Are we going to see something with some other characters? I mean, we already did see it with Luke in Return of the Jedi, but
I think there's something interesting about, and I don't want, again, I'm sorry, I'm pushing it too far. We'll wrap up, I promise. But I do think there is something interesting, and we can talk, and we can have a whole other episode about, like, should Luke, Han, and Leia come into the Mandoverse in a big way? Should they not? We can talk about that, whatever, later. But there is something interesting right now about looking at Luke, Han, the legacy of the original trilogy from an Indian perspective through other people, through Din, through Mando, through Carson, through the Rebels gang, and not necessarily like what I think people do want. And whether or not we should have it, we can debate how we get that. I mean, maybe animated, but whether or not have like the Luke story, the actual, like, here's Luke dealing with stuff. It's like, no, we're viewing it through other people's eyes, which is, I think, kind of interesting.
Might be more accessible. I can see that.
I would agree.
Yeah, but anywho,
I'll say one thing. I think we are going to get the Luke story eventually.
Yeah,
I'll be very curious to see how. I'm very curious.
That is the question.
Exactly. But we've been going for 2 hours and 17 minutes. It's almost 8 o'clock where I am. I'm sure it's late for you guys too. Seems like Matthew did not have his coffee.
Well, I had my coffee before. Don't worry. I had decaf though.
Okay.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm awake.
Nice.
I see what you're doing, Skywalker Academy. Yes, and give it to me too.
Oh, I see.
We don't. Yeah, I mean, we're all getting old. We're all getting old.
Speak for
but yeah, I think that should do it for our sequel trilogy talk. It's always fun talking the sequels. Omar, thanks for coming. You're kind of my sequel trilogy guy. So thank you for being with us.
Yes. I'm. Thank you so much for having me. I love talking the sequels. I love talking meta narratives. And this is just a perfect place to just throw out all the stuff in my brain onto you guys, and so you guys can hear me ramble for several minutes. Yeah,
indeed.
Exactly.
So, I guess Omar, you had a little something you wanted to plug at the end of the show.
Yes.
How about you do that now as we wrap up?
Yeah, I'll just repeat again. At the Negotiator is all my socials. At the Negotiator 95 is all my socials. At the Negotiator is on YouTube, and you're going to want to keep an eye on my YouTube channel because I am currently I'm currently working on a critical analysis of the Mandoverse, but with a specific lens of how everything connects to each other and whether or not it has worked as an interconnected piece of media so far. So it's going to be in big part an analysis of the entire Mandoverse, a critical analysis. So I am a little critical on everything there, but at the same time I do talk about what I do love about each and every one. but focusing again on how they connect to each other and whether or not it works as this long-standing narrative that has been going on for 4 years now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
So
And counting.
that's what the video is going to be about, and it's looking to be a big one. It's almost 50 minutes long.
Nice.
Or it
It's a
is 50 minutes long. God. I'll throw the Negotiator documentary in the beginning to really get
Nice.
people. But
Can me
anyway,
and Matthew cameo in it and just us arguing about Mando season 4?
Oh my God.
Sure. Yes, it should.
I'll find somewhere to write that in. But
Yeah, you can clip that in. You can just do that.
Yeah, exactly. Just what we got from this argument here, I'll just throw into there in the middle. But that's all I have to plug. Thank you so much for having me again on your podcast.
Yes.
We can't wait to watch it. I'm excited.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Definitely, fantastic conversation. I mean, if everything you've just spent the last 2.5 hours talking about anything go by, definitely looking forward to that conversation, because you definitely been a pleasure to hear everything you have to say, and really articulate and really well
Thank you.
put and very clear. And so, I mean, it's good content. That's what we want. Intelligent arguments. That's what we hope for here at the Iron Canon podcast. Thanks everyone for tuning in, sticking around. Skywalker Academy, etc. Others who have been watching for good 2 hours 20 minutes. We're pushing the lengths here. The Iron Canon podcast. It's okay. It's all good. I'm awake. I'm fine. There you go. If you like this conversation, if you hated this conversation, I don't know. Let us know what you thought.
Tell us why the sequels have no theme in their crud.
If you still think that, if you're like me and you think Mando season 4 needs to still be season 4, with Joel needs to be a film. It's good to be a film. If you Omar and you're somewhere in between.
I'm more in between, honestly, than I think I gave myself for. I just
enough.
like at this point, I'm like
argue.
season 3. Season 3 just disappointed so much. I'm like, I don't care anymore. Just
well, let us
make
know
it
what you
better.
think in the comments below on all these socials. Give this video a like and a follow, and this channel subscription. We also, of course, have super chats and YouTube memberships on the Underworld channel. Also, of course, Underworld Facebook, Underworld Twitch, Iron Canon Twitch, Iron Canon Twitter, Knockout X, Underworld Twitter, at the SWU at Iron Canon Pod. I should put that up there. And then just give all our socials alike, and stay tuned. Some things under development coming in the new year. We're still chatting away about some things, but for now, Joel, where can they find you? I'll get your plugs in a minute, Omar. Joel, where can they find you?
You can find me at GID 2021, again, GID 2021 on Twitter, and of course at the Iron Canon Pod. I have recently done another fun little thread about why the First Order has a genealogical connection to the Old Republic. And of course, you can find me on the Star Wars Underworld Discord.
Yes, I'll definitely check out the Discord as well. The link downstairs in the notes at Iron Canon Pod, EYEON CANONPOD on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. You can find me on Twitter. Still calling it Twitter. I'm not going to call it X. It's a dumb name. Elon Musk can't win. At NEUG45, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at MNEUG1138. And I'm in the Discord too. Give me a tag if you want. I'll see what you got to say. Omar, again, give you the plugs. The last word for you. Anything else you want to plug? Any locations?
Yeah, for sure. Just again, at the Negotiator 95, pretty much everywhere, including Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. On YouTube at the Negotiator. Check it out there. So, yep, that's everything. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. I'm definitely looking forward to that 50 minutes. I'm gonna take my lunch break, grab some food, sit down sometime. Last little bit here. Tractor Beam this Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. No, other way around. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. It is late here in Eastern time zone. I guess it'll be 8 p.m. Central. In case you're wondering. So yeah, grab your dinner, grab your comics, grab your beverage, grab your comics. Chris and I are gonna chat about what's coming down the pipe and what's already come out. Check that out, and then same bat time, same bat channel, same Spidey time, same Spidey channel. I guess I don't know. Possibly next week, although we'll let you know. There might be some movement around the next episode just for people's schedules. We'll see. We're hopefully going to chat about Eye of Darkness. See if I can finish that and get some people to chat about it, and then we'll see. We'll let you know also what we're doing for for the holiday break. Later on, might talk about either take a break or have some other things going on. But we'll definitely be back Wednesday night and Monday night or Sunday night. We'll figure something out. And also, of course, Thursday night at 9, the flagship podcast, Star Wars Underworld thing. That this whole thing is named after the flagship pod that's been going on for 12 years or so. They're still going strong. They're back as strong as ever after the strike. So keeping it real. Again, next time, Eye of Darkness by George Mann. We'll give that a look. Until then, Joel and Omar, let's blow this thing and head home.